Everyone, if we could have your attention. We're starting tonight's meeting with a very special group here, and I have a proclamation to read. We're all going to be doing the Wolfpack sign when this is done, okay? If Kirsten's mama, the UNC girl, can give the Wolfpack sign, Stormy, come on. So let's see. Could I sneak in here? Right, I'm going to read this proclamation, and when it's done, you'll all understand why we're here celebrating tonight. Okay, whereas cheerleading is a sport in which participants encourage and motivate their sports teams, it can also be performed as entertainment for audiences in competition. And whereas the North Carolina State University cheerleading program competed at the National Cheerleading Association College Nationals in Daytona Beach, Florida, April 6th through 8th, 2023. And whereas NC State's small co-ed team finished first. Finished first in the highly competitive Advanced Small Co-ed Division 1A, which included the University of Louisville, Arkansas State, University of Kansas, University of Akron, Ohio State University, Brigham Young University, and Central Florida. They kicked their butts. Awesome. Earning the coveted title of the 2023 Advanced Small Co-ed National Champions. And whereas this national championship is North Carolina State University's 8th national cheerleading competition, and whereas the Raleigh City Council is proud to publicly commend and congratulate this team for its outstanding accomplishment, now therefore do I, Mary Ann Baldwin, Mayor of the City of Raleigh, hereby proclaim today, May 2nd, NC State Small Co-ed Cheerleading Team NCA 2023 National Champions Day. Will you come over for a second? So we were teasing our city manager for a moment. If you will get right there. Marshall, who is an avid UNC fan, well, her daughter, Kirsten, David, right here, is on that cheerleading squad that came in first. And we just want to get a picture with her also doing this, but I also want our city councilors to please get up and join. We're going to get some pictures. And don't forget, Wolfpack sign. No cartwheels. Congrats. Thanks for coming tonight. This was fun. Oh, come on.
I was asked to provide some brief remarks. My name is Harold Trammell. I'm the head coach of the cheerleading squad at NC State. We're so thankful for the opportunity to be here tonight to be recognized in front of such amazing guests. This was our 8th national championship, but each national championship is always special. It's always great to have an opportunity to do something that you prepare all season for. So some of these kids have cheered their whole life. And this year ended up being on our small co-ed team that won the national championship in Daytona Beach. But it's an honor. It's a great opportunity for our athletes to, again, just to see all the hard work that they put in on a daily basis in the classroom, on the field, cheering our teams on from the first games that we cheer in September all the way through the games that we cheer in March, to finally have an opportunity to do something for ourselves. And they made the most of it, winning a national championship, going in first place after day one in prelims, and holding on that on in finals. So I couldn't be any more proud of these student athletes that we have here and our coaching staff for the amazing job they've done all season. It's great that we finished with a national championship, but the work that they do and the commitment they have to the university and to their studies makes them winners no matter what. So, thank you.
Thank you. Get a grip.
She will die tonight before it's over with.
Yes, you can blame me. Okay, we started tonight with some fun, having the Wolfpack cheerleading squad here. That was an awesome achievement, and we're happy to recognize them. And now we're going to start with public comment. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. We have quite a list tonight. I'm going to ask like 5 at a time to please come up so we don't have delays between speakers. We're going to start with Woody Biggs, and if I could also have Rocher Dave, Andrea Fennell, Octavia Rainey, and Suzanne Kitchberg come up, that would be great. Thank you.
I had a presentation planned, but it will have to wait for another night as we have more Glenwood South crime to talk about. 3 weeks ago, within an 8-hour span, we had gunfire in a Glenwood South apartment that spilled outside. Hours later, someone walked into a Glenwood South restaurant and stabbed someone. Then hours later, there was gunfire on Peace Street at Glenwood. I recently saw a lady who asked, "How is Glenwood South?" She has asked her daughter not to be in Glenwood South later at night because it is unsafe. She said, "Why isn't the city doing something about Glenwood South?" When people talk to me about Glenwood South, and many do, the most frequent line said to me is, "Why isn't the city doing something about Glenwood South?" And when they say the city, they are thinking of you, as you are the face of the city. For years, the city has done little to get a handle on Glenwood South, and I think the chickens have come home to roost. The public sees Glenwood South as a problem area and increasingly crime-ridden, yet the city sees it as vibrant. The listserv for Cameron Park is lighting up with how they are now being affected by Glenwood South. People are parking in the neighborhood and walking to Glenwood South and returning in the early morning hours, waking up residents and causing a disturbance. 2 weekends ago, a group of young men were parked on a Cameron Park street, and at 3 a.m., one of the group tried to kick in the front door of a house. The house just happens to be the personal home of Governor and Mrs. Cooper. I want to read to you how the First Lady of North Carolina closed her listserv post. This is not what vibrancy looks like to me. Thank you. I'll see you next month.
Thank you. Rocher Dave.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Richard DeVay. I am a student at NC State and also part of an organization called Consulture Community, also known as CYC. It's a student-run nonprofit organization that provides pro bono consulting services to small businesses in the Raleigh community. And our chapter was founded in 2016. Over the years, we've built strong relationships with small businesses and also with community partners like the Downtown Raleigh Alliance and Live It Up Hillsborough Street. Since our start, we have served over 60 clients, which also recently included the city of Raleigh. And while they don't represent our traditional client profile, our work with the Housing and Neighborhoods Department has benefited over 700 businesses in just the last semester. Last year, CYC hosted its first ever small business fair on NC State's campus to provide over 10 small businesses with increased student engagement and visibility. To encourage interaction with the vendors, the team designed Business Bingo to facilitate meaningful discussions and also learn new facts about the businesses. Bingo winners even got free samosas, which I gotta tell you were fabulous. Following the event, we received an incredible amount of positive feedback from the vendors regarding impressive attendance engagement, the number of sales flowing in continuously, and also increased traffic to their stores after the event ended. Our inaugural small business fair was approximately $2,800. And while we were able to put on an amazing event, we are requesting $5,000 from the city of Raleigh to continue our great impact on the community and also help facilitate our vision for a vibrant small business fair. With these additional funds, we are excited to expand the 2023 Small Business Fair to continue community engagement during the event and sustain those relationships afterwards as well. To encourage more student attendance, we will have live music from local bands, more food truck options, and also yard games. Our incoming president doesn't know this yet, but we plan on throwing him the dunk tank as well. We will plan on hosting about 20 small businesses and implement additional marketing and communication materials to drive sales and also visibility. Building on our previous business bingo concept, we also plan on developing an interface that will encourage students to uniquely interact with these businesses in the form of a web app. With these expansion strategies, we will make our event more accessible and engaging while still achieving our goal of helping small businesses gain visibility within our community. We recognize the vitality of individual contributors in sustaining our economy, and with your financial support, we can continue to invest in our small businesses and see to it that our community continues to flourish. Thank you very much. With that, I'm happy to take additional questions if there are any.
So I just wanted to mention that Councilmember Jones had asked for the funding today for your group, and it will come back to us at our third meeting in May. So yes, but I want to encourage you to keep up the great work, and I want to ask, when is the next one slated?
The next one is slated for the following spring, so we're about a year out. Our planning process will start in the beginning of the fall semester, and so we hope to have it sometime February or March.
Okay, great.
And then I just have a quick question. How do you plan on managing the funds and then ensuring that they're utilized properly?
Yeah, sure. So we are a chapter within a national organization. Our bank account is managed by us, but also by the COO of Consulture Community. And so there are multiple eyes on it. It's not just a one person has whole access to it, which is very important when we're handling funds because we handle hopefully City of Raleigh funds, but also our student appropriations funds. In addition to that, we do have expense tracking that we have implemented. And so every expense that goes into our business account is tracked. We have a spreadsheet. We, require screenshots of receipts. And so, everything that is taken out of our bank account is tracked within our chapter. And in addition to that, we have a leadership team that is about 5 to 6 people strong, and we all collaborate on, things like the Small Business Fair. And so there are a lot of stakeholders who are part of managing this, the organization's finances as well.
Thank you so much. I'm just very proud of you guys, and thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And you had the wolf pack here to cheer you on. Andrea Fennell?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone. In late August 1619, 20 to 30 enslaved Africans landed at Point Comfort, today's Fort Monroe in Hampton, Virginia. aboard the English privateer ship White Lion. In Virginia, these Africans were traded in exchange for supplies. The majority of enslaved Africans brought in North America, arrived between 1720 and 1780. Slavery was legally practiced in the state of North Carolina until January 1st, 1863. Plantation slaves lived in small shacks with a dirt floor and little or no furniture. Life on large plantations with a cruel overseer was oftentimes the worst. The Mordecai House is the oldest residence in Raleigh, on its original foundation, closely associated with the founding Lane family. The property is representative of the plantations that once dominated the local landscape. The house was named after Moses Mordecai, whose first wife, Margaret Lane, had inherited from her father, Henry. After she died, Mordecai married her sister, Anne Lane, in 1824. The family were also prominent slave owners, and many slaves, both those who worked in the home and those who worked the fields, lived on the plantation. The State Historic Site narrates the stories of both the free and enslaved residents, including moving testimonials from 3 former slaves. His daughter, Margaret Mordecai, married and inherited the mansion. Her descendants owned and occupied Mordecai House into 1967. Are you paying attention, ma'am? Okay. Closely associated with the founding Lane family, portion of the house was built by Joel Lane for his son, Henry. At one time, the plantation house was the center of a 5,000-acre plantation, one of the largest in Wake County. I'm sure you know that. Lane is considered a founder of Raleigh, as 1,000 acres was sold from his plantation as the site of the city. Mordecai Historic Park is now managed by the City of Raleigh's Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department. The Mordecai House is the designated Raleigh Historic Landmark. Reparations is a debt owed. A debt owed. It's a debt owed, Marianne, one you did not want to recognize. And my ancestors did not collect their checks, so I'm here to collect. Evanston, Evanston, Illinois, as a city, approved money for the Black Americans that are descendants of slaves or experienced redlining, Jim Crow, lynchings, housing discrimination, etc. Reparations was approved in Evanston, and since Raleigh was home to one of the biggest plantations that you call historic, is the reason why Raleigh needs to cut the check. Now, there was a time when you was asked a question about whether Raleigh should owe us money.
Okay,
Well,
thank
I'll
you,
leave
Andrea.
this off
Your
to the
time
next
is up.
person. They'll bring it up.
Next, we have Octavia Rainey.
Good evening. My name is Octavia Rainey, and I'm here to talk about the TOD on Newbern Avenue. I don't support the TOD on Newbern Avenue. That is the biggest mistake that the city will make. You are pushing the Black people off bus number 15. I ride bus number 15, and bus number 15 has standing room only. So why would you want to bring the BRT when it's standing room over? I thought the Rosa Parks days was over, but you're bringing them back, and that's a shame. Also, on the TOD, Ira said it. The TOD is redlining. The TOD will stop big cars, but don't stop little cars. Ira said it, and he had to clean it up. But that just goes to show that you didn't have a fair housing consultant on the team. The city of Raleigh don't even enforce fair housing law. You haven't enforced it for 30 years. What are you actually waiting for? You bring these plans in, but you don't have a fair housing consultant. There is no equity in that plan. That plan even moved Black businesses off the corridor, and they have a right to be there. Even if you upgrade them too. I don't understand it. I don't even see why you went to Denver, because Denver should have asked y'all one question only. Do y'all in the city of Raleigh enforce the Fair Housing Act? It's the law. And y'all would have said no, and y'all should have came right back home. Because There's no justice in that at all. And I am very serious about that. I don't understand why you went. All they had to do was ask y'all that question. And y'all would have said, no, we don't do that. You haven't done that for 30 years. Why? The Fair Housing Act was the biggest legislation ever passed. It's the biggest civil rights act ever. So you're telling me that you don't give a hoodlum a ham sandwich about civil rights? Something wrong with that picture. Something is definitely wrong with that picture. And I said this to you, and you also use the census against black people. You use it. You use it. Just like when they was talking about that 40-story hotel, and then they draw a circle. They left downtown and went all the way out to Bart Street, and they said, now I didn't say this, they said it. It's too much low
Octavia,
income. It
your
is no
time is
black
up.
people living in downtown.
Octavia,
Period.
thank you. I'm going to ask everybody to please limit themselves to the 3-minute remarks, and when you hear the buzzer go off, please stop. Thank you. That way we can get through and hear everybody. Suzanne Kirchberger, and then Bernice Bethia.
Good evening. I'm Susanne Kirchberger and would like to speak in behalf of the Raleigh Police Department and all of the officers who put their lives out for all of our safety. They just not only there to keep the crime down, they help in so many more ways. Without the help of the Raleigh Police Department, my personal life could look really different today. I live in Southeast Raleigh with my husband, who I met while he was stationed in Germany. He's an Army combat veteran who has his struggles adjusting to the life after combat. We already moved from state to state since I'm here in the States, but hopefully found our home here. Last year he had a severe crisis and placed a 911 call. He was scared for his life and even thought I am in with the bad guys. As the first officers arrived, he didn't even realize them and barricaded himself in the room. I was completely out of control and panicked too, because I don't need to tell you how many veterans killed themselves. These officers did not only try to calm me down, they also worked for hours talking, trying to get through to him. They did not leave him until he felt safe and willing to come out and to see a doctor. They brought him to the hospital this night and picked him up the next day to bring him to the VA hospital in Durham. They made sure he is getting the help he needs and checked on me through calls. He still struggles, but he has several phone numbers of officers who told him to call anytime he feels unsafe. The officers go beyond their duty. They give us the peace to go to sleep at night while they're protecting us. Crime is out of control, and they risk their lives on a daily basis for us. Can we really put a price on that? Can we risk them losing the motivation because they don't get the pay they deserve? I'm asking you to think about that when planning your budget. These officers are so much needed and should have all of our respect, and the least we can do is pay them right. I never thought I would be involved with the police, but without them, I don't know what I would have done. Now I'm a little better prepared and reach out for help, but I never got judged by any officers, but they assure my husband he is safe in his home. These officers deal with so much more than crime, mental health issues, or just being out in the community to help us on a daily basis. Please keep them and try to consider a raise for them that they can make Raleigh what it is, a safe place, environment for families. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Bernice?
Good afternoon. My name is Bernice Bethia. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bernice Bethia. I'm here on behalf of the Raleigh Police Department. I would like to say it's an honor in this day and time to have such an encouraging voice. We can depend on day and night. If there's a need, they are only a phone call away. I have had a personal issue with a man tried to pick me up and put me in his car, but I placed that call. I got help immediately, and I got the issue resolved. I even got a follow-up call to make sure I was good. I'm a senior citizen living in the southeast Raleigh area for 30 plus years. I have seen crime and very little safety in my area. With that being said, due to the lack of competitive pay, I have seen great officers leave. We really don't need or want that to keep happening. To put that to an end, we need more money for these great officers. We all know we need to be encouraged and mostly better pay. Not to say how things have gone up, and things have really gone up tremendously. I would like to ask yourself a question. That is, what are we going to do if the officers leave? Due to the lack of pay, crime will go up and we will suffer the consequences. So please, please consider a significant raise for our officers. I'm 70 years old and want to stay safe in my home, and I want to be covered by these officers. And I will leave you with a statement that my Bishop Howard B. Winston says: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks.
Thank you. So the next speaker has signed up, and it says Shaw University rezoning. I'm going to defer to the city attorney on this. My understanding is, since there's a public hearing tonight, that would be the appropriate, so help me here.
Yes, ma'am. That is correct, and I think our city attorney spoke to that in one of our earlier meetings, that the UDO is very specific, and it provides 8 minutes per side. It does not allow folks to take other routes, and I think our prior city attorney's advice, and mine as well, would be for anyone who's speaking to rezoning, those folks need to be part of the public hearing, and the UDO is very specific that equal amounts of time have to be given to an issue. So if there is someone speaking on a rezoning, that should be referred to the public hearing section.
Okay, that would be Curtis Case-Fang. Curtis, are you here? Yep. Okay, Curtis, we have to move you to the public hearing. Okay, thank you. And that would refer to anybody else who also is planning. Some of the comments are vague. I'm not sure what you're going to speak on, but if you're planning to speak about Shaw, we'll have to ask you to move to the public hearing and not continue with your comments. So thank you. Next, we have Chris Crew, Eddie Davis, Rumeel Ferguson, Frank Halima, and Matthew Brown.
Good evening, Chris Crew, 306 Elm Street, here to speak with you again about preservation and preservation issues in the city of Raleigh. A preservation mindset, I'm passing around a map to you. A preservation mindset has to include consciousness and attention to infrastructure. So if you're not aware of the great sinkhole of Oakwood, there's a map coming around. Mr. Branch, you should get the multicolor copy since it's your district. What I'd like to talk to you about is that this problem is indicative of what's to come as more infill and impervious surface gets added to our historic core and places more demand on the infrastructure. Although the drain involved in Oakwood is ostensibly a private system, you should bear in mind that the pipe receives every drop of runoff from the public right-of-way via the city street drop inlets in a 55-acre area. That's the rough square drawn in the middle of the map there. This makes this a functional part of the municipal stormwater system regardless of who owns it. It drains 2.4 million square feet of collection area. If you assume that 60% of that area is impervious, that means that for every inch of rain that falls on that, 860,000 gallons of water goes through that pipe and under that house. All of it is trying to get through a single century-old pipe, and there's a potential for property damage, and there are likely adverse federal water quality implications to this continued condition. So I would like you to keep the facts of physics in mind and pay some attention to the infrastructure in the city of Raleigh and the impact that development is going to have on it. I'd like to also take another minute to talk about the Transportation Overlay District, and there's still a lack of attention to preservation in here. I've been to a bunch of, or several anyway, public and neighborhood meetings the past few weeks regarding this, and listened to questions that still go unanswered about the algorithms that redrew the zoning lines there. There are deep concerns about the impacts and outcomes of these zoning changes that have not been included in presentations. Citizens have been referred to sophisticated mapping and viewing tools on the website that are designed for professional planners, and most citizens don't have a clue how to use those tools. I struggled with it to make that. As it stands, we might get efficient and effective public transportation out of this. We might get a few more affordable housing units. What we will get is probable loss of existing affordable housing units. City planning has no estimate as of last week of how many rental units are in the area subject to rezoning. There's been no discussion about the potential negative impact of these changes on the generational wealth of Southeast Raleigh. Thank you.
Eddie Davis.
Before I start speaking, I have a petition that I did submit that I want to like to.
Could you go to the microphone, please?
Excuse me?
Could you go to the microphone?
I have a petition that I submitted early on that I like to be shown up on the screen regarding rent control. Madam Speaker, Mayor Baldwin, City Council staff, good evening. My name is Eddie Davis. I'm the founder and CEO of APFC, a nonprofit organization. This is my fourth time speaking here. From day one, my agenda was rent control. I was told by our mayor that rent control is against the law in the state of North Carolina. We can't keep being silent. But I didn't stop there. On February 22nd, 2023, we had a meeting with Senator Lisa Grafstein, voicing our concerns regarding rent control and more affordable housing. Senator Grafstein written up the bill. On March 7, 2023, Bill 225 were presented to the Senate floor. I have a short clip I would like to present to you all at this time. Can you have them show that clip?
We do not have it.
If it's not available.
Did you submit a
All right, let me move on.
Talking about the one you had
Okay.
previously submitted.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry,
Could we stop the time, please?
Did you submit a new one for this meeting, or are you referring
For
to
this
the one
meeting.
you had previously
No,
submitted?
for this meeting.
You submitted it to the clerk or
Yes,
to?
to the clerk. Okay, we're going to move on because I don't want to run out of time.
Start the time.
We're making progress. We have a lot of work to do. Mayor Baldwin, you have a very important job. Your voice carries some weight. Use it to help meet the needs of the people. We can't keep being silent. If you can't handle it, step down. We will be pushing for more affordable housing. A push for change will meet each branch of government at their level. Sometimes I think we're standing here speaking to a bunch of empty chairs. There's never a response. We can't keep being silent. APFC will continue to fight for economic changes and making good trouble for a good cause. And we can't keep being silent. We're tired of you being silent, Ms. Mayor. Ask not what the city of Raleigh and Wake County could do for you, but what you could do for the city of Raleigh and Wake County to make a better place to live. Thank you so much, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Next we have Ramel Ferguson. Is Ramil here? Okay, thank you.
Can I make a quick comment?
No. Later. We'll talk later.
How you doing? My name is Ramil Ferguson. First and foremost, I didn't come with anything written because I wanted whatever I said to come straight from the heart. The City of Raleigh permitting department sucks. Let me just I'm not the first one to say it, and I'm sure I won't be the last one to say it. As an African American, everything I have, I've had to work for. I went down to the city permitting department numerous times asking, what do I need to do about getting a permit for expanding my business? Numerous times, no one can help me. I go ahead, I follow the directions of everybody, submit my documentation, spent probably about $150,000 of my own money because we know the banking system doesn't really work for us that well. But at the end of the day, I spent $150,000 of my money that I saved. Didn't go to family, I worked for it. Now the City of Raleigh tells me I have to add specialized sprinkler systems, $50,000 to $80,000 job. They tell me I need to, because I'm asking for a new permit, I need to update my backflow valve, when everybody else tells me that if it doesn't fail, you should be grandfathered in. That's a $3,500 job I got. Then I need to add some different type of insulation into the ceiling. That's a $4,000 job. Right now I'm sitting at about $120,000 of money that I did not account for, nor can I go back to the bank because I am the bank. So do I stop my project then? I have to. Why? Because the City of Raleigh, when I asked for help, you wouldn't even give it to me. I don't even care if you had to said to me, it's $500. You'll sit down one-on-one with an inspector. They'll walk you through what you need. That way, when I went to the Bank of Ramil, I would have had it. I wouldn't have got stuck in the middle of my project dead smack because the City of Raleigh has these that no one can help until you until you've already got halfway through the job. I don't know. My last name is not Kane. It ain't Rockefeller, nor is it Carnegie. I don't have it like that. So for you, and I do a lot for the city that you all, and I'm not up here to brag, that you all probably don't even realize that I do. I've started a nonprofit to help people in the city. I've done things. My business actually helps people in the city. At the end of the day, if you all can't help me, I will take my business and numerous other businesses that I'm attached to somewhere else. Because there's no need for me to give y'all money if you can't help me because my last name ain't Kane. So I'm sure you probably don't have anything to say to me or anything to ask me any questions. I suggest you guys fix this problem before I come for somebody's seat. And I'll fix it myself.
I was going to ask you, can you give us the address of this project?
It is 2820 Trawick Road.
Okay, and that's the address right here that you've given. Is that your own?
That is my company's address. My personal address has nothing to do with why I'm here.
Okay, we'll have,
So, Ms. Ferguson, if you'll walk to the back, somebody from staff is going to connect with you to try to see if we can't clarify some of the issues you've raised.
next we, Frank Hilima. Hiloma.
While I understand that the New Bern Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project complied with the Environmental Protection Act in applying for federal funds, we have to ensure that the Transit Overlay District and the frequent transit area do not damage this ecosystem, which is home for many within one of Raleigh's most vulnerable populations, our frontline service workforce. The TOD proposal includes minimal incentives for construction of housing for citizens at 60% AMI along the New Bern Avenue corridor. The width of this corridor is actually narrower than the missing middle frequent transit area corridor. The FTA corridor extends for a quarter mile on each side of New Bern Avenue and includes minimal incentives for construction of housing affordable at 80% AMI. So the FTA actually has greater potential to destroy affordable housing in a larger area than the TOD does. Land values along the New Bern Avenue corridor could be the most attractive to developers in our rapidly gentrifying city. These neighborhoods have historically been home to many of Raleigh's Black citizens who have lengthy experience with the negative effects of infrastructure projects such as the interstate highway system and urban renewal. Concerns that the FTA and TOD will lead to further displacement are real. A focused impact assessment on the consequences of both the FTA and TOD should be conducted. It should start with a detailed accounting of household income, race, and owner-occupied versus rental status of each home within the FTA and TOD. Statistics should be reported on where households in the FTA and TOD compare in housing costs to Raleigh's other neighborhoods. 2020 census data include information on race and household income. A survey of regional NOAA units exists. If budget is an issue, my response is that council has numerous times allocated hundreds of thousands of dollars for Dix Park studies. I believe that this study would document and incentivize risk for loss of NOAA, which could displace large numbers of current residents, particularly renters who are below Raleigh's AMI. This could contribute to a significant increase in Raleigh's homeless population and the social and health consequences of being unhoused. By policy, for every unit of NOAA lost through redevelopment, the city should have a plan to replace that unit, affordable at the same AMI, plus 10% more units to rebuild NOAA stock lost in the last few years. A comprehensive study by the nonprofit Urban Institute published on March 29 of zoning reforms to encourage density in over 1,000 cities found little help for any but upper-income households and no increase in affordable rental units. You should apply the FTA text changes to only New Bern Avenue and be very cautious that the TOD not destroy NOAA for citizens making as low as 30% AMI.
Thank you. Matthew Brown.
Good evening, friends. Thank you for your service, and thank you for letting me speak. Last Wednesday, planning staff reported to the Planning Commission regarding the proposed TOD, Transit Overlay District, that will incentivize demolition of hundreds of homes in East Raleigh's historic neighborhoods. Staff stated that the Longview neighborhood originally had a restrictive racial covenant, as if that justifies demolishing part of the neighborhood. But this covenant was struck down by the Supreme Court in 1948, and Longview has been a harmoniously racially integrated neighborhood for over 50 years. It's about equal black and white with other folks as well. This is what America should look like. This is history with a happy ending. This neighborhood should be celebrated, not demolished. I understand there's controversy about whether the city should apologize or pay reparations to our black citizens for injustices of the past, including slavery, segregation, and urban renewal, which demolished historic black neighborhoods. Well, perhaps this issue is difficult, but one thing should be easy. Let's just stop doing the things that will require more apologies and reparations. Let's stop demolishing our historic black neighborhoods. Now, planning staff says, well, the city won't be demolishing them. Private developers will demolish them. Yes, but if you pass this TOD, you will incentivize demolition in two ways. The upzoning will increase the tax values of the properties, creating hardship for the current owners and incentivizing them to sell, at the same time incentivizing developers to buy and demolish because they can build bigger buildings. So in effect, the city will be demolishing these neighborhoods, and some future city council will have to apologize for this one. Unless you, dear city council members, please speak to our planning staff and tell them that you cannot approve this TOD rezoning until they remove these historic neighborhoods. Thank you.
Next, we have Dee Previn Crew, Manish Lamba, Tim Niles, Deborah Bromley, and John Shuford.
Hi, I'm Dee Penvin Crew, and full disclosure, I am the president of the Society for the Preservation of Historic Oakwood. I am not here in that capacity. I'm here in my private homeownership in that neighborhood and its proximity to the neighborhoods that are going to be heavily impacted by the TROD if it's passed. Clearly, the society is all about preservation of historic properties. In 1972, the city of Raleigh and the state of North Carolina thought it would be a great idea to demolish a healthy portion of the neighborhood of Oakwood in order to install a north-south expressway to get people from North Raleigh into the city so that they could go to work. That was turned down, thank goodness, and we have a vibrant, wonderful community there with the largest intact historic Victorian neighborhood in the state. Unfortunately, the TOD will impact 29 properties in the historic district of Oakwood. It doesn't necessarily tear them down, but it certainly incentivizes people to tear them down for a healthy profit. And as we nibble away at the edges of all of these historic neighborhoods, it will become easier and easier to take bigger bites out of them until they no longer exist. A lot of people believe that the neighborhood of Oakwood is a wealthy enclave of rich people. And I am here to tell you it is not. There are wealthy people that live there, but I live there and I am not wealthy. I have lived there for 34 years, and the only reason I can afford to is because my husband and I bought 2 broken down houses, fixed one up, used the profit, and bought another one, and have lived in it for just about 24 years now. So not everyone there is wealthy. We have elderly people, we have low-income people, and this will serve to displace a large number of them. Not only will we lose homes in Oakwood, we'll lose homes in Hungry Neck and Longview and College Park. These are historically black neighborhoods to a large degree. A lot of rental properties exist in those neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods will be torn down because the landlords will be incentivized to sell those properties. There will be loss of generational wealth because of the sale of properties that have been owned in families for more than 100 years. People who ride the bus are not people who are at 60% AMI. They are lower than that. That 60% AMI target is a little too high. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Manish Lamba.
Good evening. My name is Manish Lamba, 518 East Lane Street. I'm here to talk about the TOD rezoning. Residents along this TOD know that this will cause gentrification, displacement of thousands of families across that district. Many of these families have called this home for decades, and they don't deserve to lose their homes. I've also called Chicago as my third home. I've lived there for many years. I've seen when the city rezoned an area called West Loop. That was old rundown homes that they called it, were quickly displaced with high-rise apartments catering to high-income earners. Within a decade, condos went from $75 a square foot to over $500 a square foot. As a result, the original owners and residents of this area who were working class and low-income earners were forced out of these areas into taking further bus rides and the L further out just to get to work in the morning. The impact of this plan does not just displace people, but will lead to the loss of the community, culture, and history of this area. Displaced families may be forced to move to areas which are less safe, less accessible to the BRT, which was designed for them and is going to be against them at the end of the day. This can be a long-term impact on all health, education, and overall well-being of these families. I feel like Raleigh's at a crossroads right now. It can either take into account the needs of the interests of the existing residents as well as the potential impact of their lives, and we must strive for responsible growth during this time, or we can decide that the development for providing housing to the affluent, transplants, and high earners inside the Beltline is more important at any cost. Thank you.
Tim Niles. Tim Niles. This is the updated list from the clerk's office.
At your work session on election reform, I heard a consensus. 1, you will not support 4-year terms without a primary or ranked choice voting to end plurality elections. 2, you will put your proposal to a referendum vote of the people in March of 2024. With these givens, you cannot hold a primary in March of 2024 to end plurality elections. Therefore, you cannot hold elections for 4-year terms in November of 2024. There was discussion of increasing the size of council by adding more districts or at-large councilors. The study group recommended adding a district. The public survey preferred adding a district. Neither preferred adding an at-large seat. Most district councilors prefer adding multiple districts to decrease their size. Mayor Baldwin and Councilor Melton considered adding an at-large seat because it would not require redrawing districts. But since you are not holding a primary in March of 2024, new council districts do not have to be drawn until June of 2024, over a year from now, with plenty of time to prepare and engage the public. Yes, redrawing the districts was a bad experience in the last election. You approved changes condemned by multiple voting rights groups, exhibiting both a flawed process and an outcome that reduced minority voting power. You intentionally gerrymandered District B in an attempt to harm David Cox because you didn't know he wasn't running for re-election. You moved 2 of his 3 top-performing precincts out of his district. These were both minority precincts moved out of a minority district into a white majority district. You did this against the wishes of the residents of those precincts while there were less disruptive options available. Let professionals draw the new districts out in the open and without an agenda. I understand the preference for an at-large district. For the mayor, an at-large councilor is easier for her to control. Councilor Melton has never won an election with a majority of the vote, and adding a 3rd at-large seat where a candidate only has to finish in the top 3 to win makes re-election easier for him. Raleigh has had an 8-member council since the 1970s. Our population has increased exponentially. Now is the time to add 3 new districts to bring the council to 11 members to better represent the people. The biggest danger in all of this is that if the mayor doesn't get what she wants, she will simply turn to the state legislature and have them impose her wishes upon the city. That's what the previous council did to create plurality elections, and it was an issue in the last election. Do it again, and it'll be a bigger issue next time, I guarantee it. Thank you.
Deborah Bromley.
Thank you. I'm Deborah Bromley from the Raleigh Friends Meeting, a Quaker faith community. We're based at 625 Tower Street. I'm aware that on April 4th, this happened at the City Council meeting, and here I'm quoting from the minutes of that meeting. So, quote, Human Relations Chair Byron Laws presented annual work plan. Mayor Baldwin asked City Council to look into legalities of reparative justice issues. Chair Laws asked if City Attorney could also look at recommendations from Raleigh Demands Justice. Work plan approved unanimously with exception of reparations, with that coming back for further discussion after City Attorney reports back. End of quote. So, if I'm correct, the City Attorney was given 90 days to respond. I will rise above the controversy surrounding why this resolution is being stalled for adoption and simply ask that the time period for the City Attorney's response be shortened to 60 days, not 90 days, 60 days. After all, the Human Relations Commission had 3 lawyers review it before putting it into their work plan, which would mean that 60 days would mean that the City Council would have the attorney's response for their June meeting and could potentially approve the resolution for adoption on Juneteenth, June 19th. If you don't know what Juneteenth is, look it up. Juneteenth, 2023. Wouldn't that be something to celebrate? As part of the initial team working to get this resolution in front of City Council and approved, we had hoped to see this resolution adopted for Juneteenth in 2022, a year ago. I think Juneteenth 2023 is now time for the City of Raleigh to adopt the reparative justice resolution and begin the work that the resolution asks. Thank you.
Dottie, could you update us in the next manager's report on where you are with that?
Yes, ma'am, and I may send that to the council. There are legal issues that I want to raise to the council, so I'll do it in the same manner that Robin has done that in the past.
Okay, thank you. John Shuford?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the reparative justice resolution. There are 2 points I want to make in support of the reparative justice resolution. If we don't know or fully understand our past as a community, we will not fully understand who we are today as a community, and it is guaranteed we will continue to repeat our past into the future. Our past of enslaving American citizens, convict leasing, Jim Crow, KKK, eugenics, the war on drugs, and mass incarceration continues today in the form of great replacement theory, inadequate public school funding, and the racist way that we fund our schools by property taxes, extreme gerrymandering, voter suppression, which I consider to be treason, a refusal for years to pass Medicaid expansion for a loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and gentrification. One example is Wade Avenue going right through Oberlin Village. Thank you, I just got a blank. Oberlin Village, and then the downtown revitalization. What happened to those other Freeman villages that were in Raleigh? We had 13 of them. Unless we know our true history, we will continue these white supremacy attacks. This resolution will not only be a vehicle to begin righting past wrongs, but will educate us so we do not continue our racist past. I ask you, what will be your legacy for your children? Did you vote to heal our community, or did you vote not? The second point is that white people do not realize that they are also hurt by our enslavement of our black citizens, Jim Crow, and other white supremacy policies. The oppressor is likewise damaged just as the oppressed. I could share with you the strong neuroscience research proving this if I had more time. And this damage is passed on to our white children and their children. How many white children commit suicide compared to black children today? And that is connected to the isolation effect of being an oppressor for generations. When I lived in Africa, I did not fear black people walking towards me on the street. What do you here in this chamber who are white feel when 3 black men are approaching you on the street? It's in our culture, it's in us all, whether we like it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not. Again, if we do not know our complete past, those things that we are proud of, and those things that we are not proud of, will move.
Thank you. I'll ask the next folks to come up, please. Mama Kai, Helen Tart, Douglas Jeanette, Charlie Burnett, and Eugene Myrick. We'll wait a minute. Okay, Mama Kai, please.
I've never had that effect on people before. Good evening, y'all. It's another amazing day in paradise. Council, thank you for your service, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Last year during the election season, I had this thought given to me. It said, Raleigh doesn't need a new mayor, it needs a matriarch. That's when I really started using Mama Kai, because moms change things. They take care of their own children and often take care of other people's children too. Even when someone has a rocky relationship with their own mom, they usually have one or two bonus moms who feel the need. So my superhero name is Mama Kai, because I intend to change things here. I was honored to spend 3 days and 1 evening attending events last week. One was a training called Using Mental Models to Make Sustainable Change in Early Childhood Systems, and the other one was the summit I mentioned on more than one occasion, Leveraging North Carolina's Resources to Prevent Child Trauma. Before I speak on them directly, and realizing I only have 3 minutes, it's important for me to mention the 2 suicides within the 24-hour period at NC State last week. That makes 7 for this academic school year. During one of the public comment sessions this year, there was a student who spoke about this matter. North Carolina ranks 13 in the United States for the most suicides. Every suicide is evidence of unaddressed trauma. Addictions are another. I know I don't have to talk about the opioid crisis here. While it's not possible to eliminate trauma, it is possible to increase resilience to adversity, and there are many initiatives around the state doing exactly that. Many were spoken of during the Prevent Child Trauma Summit, but obviously that's not enough. That brings me back to the gatherings I attended last week. The one event that stands out to me as holding the solution to all the problems that are spoken of in these meetings is the one on mental models as the foundation of systems thinking. This is from the Waters Center for Systems Thinking. As a quick overview, I'd like to explain systems thinking through an experience most of us are familiar with, the Montgomery bus boycott. What's so special about the Montgomery bus boycott was not that they used nonviolent tactics. It was actually that the mental model they used was different than before. They started the bus boycott by believing in the humanity of every Black person who rode the bus. And there was enough support around that idea that after 381 days, the Supreme Court agreed. Even though it will probably never be recorded in history that way, it's really what happened, because the bus system had been built on the belief that Black people were not equal, that in fact they were less than, absolutely inferior. So when the Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was illegal, they actually supported the point that Blacks were in fact not inferior. And that day, there wasn't the thinking to push that vision forward, so the entire government wasn't dismantled, but one aspect of the system changed the way they operated because Black people knew they deserved better. And with my time ending, I just want to let you know that I'm working on changing the mental model in this state. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen Tart.
Helen Tart, 611 Monroe Drive. I want to start by apologizing because I didn't write anything out this time. And I don't have any idea what I'm actually going to say, but I have talked to you before about the missing middle and what it's doing to my neighborhood, because missing middle doesn't mean duplexes and quadplexes. What's being built are 3-story, 5-unit on one little lot townhomes. And it's, I guess what I want to do is put a face on my neighborhood. I talked to a lady who's in between 2 of those developments. One's going to be 10 3-story townhomes, the other one's going to be 37. And her house, with a for sale sign in the middle of it now, is in the middle and is going to be, she's got 2 sisters, 2 brothers, 4 sons that live in Raleigh, and they can't sell their house for enough to live in Raleigh anymore. They're either they stay overwhelmed by these monoliths on either side, or they have to go to outside the city because the expense. And I know that the point of missing middle is to increase affordable housing, but that's not what happens. She's been there since 1990 and has spent all of her life there. Their house is paid for, but even with the little bit that people are willing to give to her, because who wants to live in between? And the people with the townhomes know that. But I guess what I'm asking really is that surely there is a way that you can help these folks that are whose lives are being disrupted by the missing middle, and, you know, give them priority for affordable housing that you're building, that kind of thing. Something. You're the leaders. I hope that you'll be able to come up with something.
Douglas Jeanette.
Appreciations to Mayor Baldwin and the City Council for the opportunity to speak in support of the Community Reparative Justice Resolution and its consideration and adoption by the Council at your June 19th meeting. As a lifelong North Carolinian and resident of Raleigh for over 50 years, I, like you, am well aware of a long history of injustices to African Americans, both general and specific, officially and privately sanctioned, that preface the resolution. These are well-documented facts that I don't need to repeat. They've been enumerated previously in tonight's meeting. The question raised by this resolution is what can and should the City of Raleigh do to honestly address and correct, to the degree possible, these injustices. The 8 action items that comprise the resolution are specific, measurable, practical, and meaningful steps in this direction. This resolution offers both symbolic and tangible steps toward mending the historical damage done to our African American citizens, to their descendants, and to the entire Raleigh community. Also, it is a step toward healing the damage done to our white citizens, as was noted earlier, who upheld and supported these injustices, and to their descendants. While not an end in itself, the resolution is another step toward Raleigh going forward and should take to address past and current racial injustices. Please shorten the consideration deadline so you can consider and adopt this resolution on June 19th, which has become, as you know, a deeply significant date for racial healing, reconciliation, and celebration. And please remember, for all of our sakes, it's never too late to do the right thing. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next, we have Charlie Burnett. Is Charlie Burnett here? Okay, Eugene Myrick.
Good evening, Eugene Myrick, Southeast Raleigh resident. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Don't take it for granted. I just want to make a couple of points. I noticed that the City Council doesn't have an education committee. Now that we have Dr. Jane Harrison, who is an educator, maybe time to create a education committee. Second point, I noticed that the encampment of homeless people that was on Capitol Boulevard, located near the BJ's, has been moved. I'm just hoping that the city at least attempted to house some of these individuals, or at the minimum, provided them with some kind of resources and didn't just make them disappear. My third point, there's a lot of talk about rapid transit from downtown and New Bern Avenue, but there's a lot of bus stops in Southeast Raleigh that don't have benches or shelter. Some people are literally standing in the streets because they don't know if they're standing on someone's grass. And I literally keep an umbrella in my car. If I see somebody in the rain, I just give it to them. Last week was the first time I've heard of a third HBCU that was in Raleigh, Latta University. Like Elizabeth City State, which was founded by Peter Moore, Shaw University grad. Central, that was founded by James Shepard, Shaw University grad. And A&T, that was actually started on Shaw University's campus. First president, John O. Crosby, Shaw University grad. Latta University, which is over by Oberlin Village, my understanding, was founded in 1892 by a gentleman referred to as Reverend Latta. So it says that the site, former Latta residence, was destroyed by fire in 2007. The university was an African-American coeducational institution. Reverend Latta was a former enslaved individual, and he wanted to educate underprivileged and orphan children, also had a kindergarten class. So again, that was just some of our history that was erased that I had absolutely no clue of until last week. And again, I'm just a citizen that comes to speak at these council meetings, and there's a lot of anxiety, angst among Raleigh residents. It's ironic that the State House has a supermajority of Republicans and the City Council is comprised of all Democrats, but there's still a lot of anxiety in the city. That leaves us open for some Republican to say, your own party didn't do you right, elect them. So it's time to really pay attention to the citizens of Raleigh because the angst, anxiety is real. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Shane Collins, Suzanne Zorn, Cole McMillan, Tom Slater, and Josh Bradley to come up.
Hello, Mayor Baldwin and Council. I just switched things up a little bit. I am going to talk about a song, Taylor Swift, and I would ask that you not shake it off, okay? I want you to not be a hater. I want you to save our neighborhoods. I was just approached by one of our neighborhood leaders. She wanted to inform me on the North Raleigh potential St. Mark's United Methodist Church development in the process on Six Forks. That's in my area as well. Roberta Seavey of Briarcliff neighborhood has 50 members who are opposed to the St. Mark's development. The realtor Mike Lewis has no prior experience with this size of a project. The proposal was presented in a pre-application status January 6th to council. This proposal would rebuild the church on a smaller portion, approximately 2 acres, down from the current 4 acres, which is sitting on Six Forks. The remaining parcel would take in the land in trade for the new church, and the developer plans to build 250 apartments, parking garage, plus commercial, right on top of this neighborhood, which includes Terry Street. The density and zoning changes do not keep with the St. Albans land use plan. The suggested tower of 12 stories will affect the neighborhood quiet of Terry Street, where children play. There are schools there. There are elderly citizens that have lived there for quite a long time along Terry Street and in back of the St. Mark's United Methodist Church. This development represents a danger to the neighborhood environment, families, and property values. The neighborhood has given much to advance the Six Forks corridor and respectfully request support for consideration of fair and equitable development, because we all know development is not stopping. So let's work with it instead of forgetting about the neighborhoods that have been established for such a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Good evening. There are a few issues regarding the new traffic calming measures that were implemented on Harps Mill Road that I would like to discuss. First, these measures were poorly designed and poorly implemented. They actually make the road more dangerous to drive and thus are also more hazardous to bikers and pedestrians because of the increased chance of a motor vehicle accident. If you have not had the opportunity to drive the new slalom course, then I invite you, no, I implore you to come do that. And if you really want to challenge your Mario Kart skills, then come drive it at night or in a heavy rain. And when you get to one end, turn around and drive it the other way. As you do, note the lack of reflectors on the jutouts, the speed hump warning signs hidden behind the trees, the lack of markings on the speed bumps, which are listed to go over at 25 miles per hour, which I did the other day and practically broke my suspension. 10 miles per hour might work. And then think about, this is a connector road between Falls of Neuse and Litchford. What's a reasonable speed limit to expect on this road? Is it 35 miles per hour, 25 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour, pedestrian only? Let's be real here. The second is that these measures ignore the fact that real people live in this neighborhood. And as such, we have the need for things like lawn maintenance services with their trailers, delivery trucks, repair trucks, moving trucks, and unfortunately, sometimes fire trucks. None of these bigger vehicles can safely traverse the tiny roundabouts or sharp angle jutouts at the posted speed limits. And that poses not only a risk to their vehicles, but to other vehicles and the actual structures themselves. Not to mention, the fire trucks can't maneuver through these at the type of speed that is often critical in times of emergencies. Third, let's talk about cost-benefit ratio. At over $150,000, this seems like a colossal waste of taxpayer money and city resources. Stop signs and speed bumps or humps would have solved this problem more efficiently, cheaply, and safely. And despite what the traffic department will tell you, stop signs actually do deter speeding and decrease accidents at intersections, as we have seen on my own road, which is Rainwater Road, right off of Harps Mill. About 10 years ago, we defeated a proposal similar to what was put on Harps Mill, and instead the traffic department put stop signs at the south end of Rainwater Road, which have dramatically decreased speeding and accidents. Fourth, and just as important in my mind, is just how did these traffic calming measures get implemented at all on Harps Mill Road, since they were voted down by the neighborhood? Why did the prior city council push this through against the city's own written policy? If you don't want our input, why go through the pretense of asking for it? How can we make sure this doesn't happen again in the future, like on Hunting Ridge Road, which is up for next year? And finally, how can we rectify the current situation? Thank you very much.
Thank you. City Manager, if you could follow up, if someone could follow up, but also follow up with us on next steps, that would be helpful. Thank you. Cole McMullen.
Cole McMullen. At the April 4th council meeting, I spoke in opposition to the annual action housing plan. City staff generously sent additional information on the action plan addressing some of the concerns brought up by myself and others, which is appreciated. Of interest to me was a section that read, "The city is not appropriately staffed and resourced to retain ownership and management of the land beneath every city-supported affordable rental development. This type of function is more appropriate for a public housing authority, which is separate and apart from the city, community land trust, or private affordable rental owner manager. Thus, the city prioritizes retaining land ownership of only highly strategic sites, such as those near high-frequency transit. While I can certainly appreciate that city staff have limited capacity, my view is that every city-owned property is a highly strategic site for retaining collective ownership of affordable housing. I think the city should explore options to either expand the housing department and the city's capacity to retain ownership of city land when affordable housing is built, or work and partner with the Raleigh Housing Authority to do so. Alternatively, I think partnering with local community land trusts is infinitely preferable to partnering with private for-profit entities. Switching gears, at the last afternoon council meeting, there were some public comments, and even tonight, supporting the increase of RPD officer pay. I would like to point out that increasing officer pay and decreasing the overall police budget are not mutually exclusive, and I think creative solutions exist to do both, such as eliminating unnecessary units like the K-9 unit, school resource officers, the selective enforcement unit, and vice unit, the latter two of which are mired in controversy stemming from wrongful arrests that have also put our city on the wrong end of a lawsuit that will ultimately hurt taxpayers. Additionally, I think it needs to be emphasized that all city employees deserve a cost of living increase that keeps pace with inflation, unlike last year when RPD officers received, I think, an 8% increase, while all other employees received only, I think, a 2% increase, if my memory is correct. Furthermore, I think we need to rethink what we ask police officers to do, such as ending the execution of no-knock warrants and the continuation of the failed war on drugs. I don't have a problem with RPD responding to a veteran who's experiencing a traumatic episode. What I have problems with is when they are above the law and are not held accountable for it. Finally, I'd like to say that I was happy to hear the discussion at last week's council work session about possibly using ranked choice voting for future city council elections. I hope the council follows this up with a request to the General Assembly to allow Raleigh to use RCV in future council elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Slater. Is Tom Slater here? Okay.
Mayor Baldwin and members of City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak as a 35-year resident of Audubon Drive and the Northridge community, where I served many years as the president of the Northridge Homeowners Association. I'm here tonight to address concerns about the recent traffic calming obstacles placed along Harps Mill Road, and I'd like to share some facts about Harps Mill Road that some of you might not be aware of. Fact, Harps Mill for many years was designated by the city as a minor thoroughfare and had a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour. That designation occurred when Harps Mill Road was connected through to Litchford in the late 1980s. Harps Mill Road was reclassified in 2018 as an undivided Avenue 2-lane mixed-use collector road. The majority of the 764 single-family homes that comprise the Northridge community and frequently travel Harps Mill Road did not receive invitations from the city to participate or vote on the Harps Mill project. Fact, Harps Mill Road traffic study conducted in 2020 shows traffic volumes along Harps Mill Road average about 5,600 vehicles per day. This traffic volume study was conducted while the new Northridge Elementary School, a significant trip generator, was closed due to COVID policy. Fact, Harps Mill Road provides essential access for not only school buses, but also fire, police, and other first responders. Fact, the balloting for Harps Mill Road failed twice, yet the former city council voted to waive city policy thresholds and proceed with the calming project. Fact, since the Harps Mill Road balloting failed in 2022, the city has revised their policy, which significantly lowers the approval thresholds for placing traffic calming devices. Fact, Harps Mill Road is 14 feet wider than the city's currently established design criteria for a 2-lane undivided avenue. Fact, traffic roundabouts and abruptness of movement required by chicanes placed by the city on Harpsmere Road do not meet current NCDOT standards. The Federal Highway Administration and the Institute of Transportation Engineers, along with many states, have established design parameters on the placement of certain traffic calming devices that restrict their use on roads where the average daily traffic is between 600 and 4,000 vehicles per day. Traffic volumes recorded by the city on Harpsmere Road are well in excess of those design parameters. Finally, I would just ask that the city rescind Article 5.1.4.1.4.1, where the city's neighborhood management program, which permits those who live on street to simply overrule any balloting results offered by other neighborhood participants. This provision is certain to alienate the majority of residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And you saw that we have asked for follow-up, so thank you. Josh Bradley.
Joshua Bradley, 1324 Spring Lawn Court. Mayor and councilors, there are a lot of attacks on democracy, freedom, human rights that are coming out of the General Assembly these days. Attacks on reproductive health care, including abortion, attacks on trans youth, attacks on fair elections, and education for all our students. What are you, as our elected city council, going to do to resist this acceleration into fascism that is happening into this state? For the four of you who were given a democracy-free, unelected year in office, can you tell your friends and comrades in the General Assembly and ask them to back off? Y'all obviously had some pull with your fellow conservatives. Please use it. For all of you, can you at least issue a statement or a declaration against this stuff? Durham does it. Why can't we? We're the capital. Can you refuse to be involved in the enforcement of these rules? Can we just say, let the state enforce them? Can you promise to not use the RPD against any protest or riot against these evil and immoral attacks on citizens of the state and the city? As a side note, please don't make these traffic cam footage available to other governments, and I'll tell you why. Because if traffic cam coverage is publicly accessible by other police forces and sheriff's departments in states that are fascist enough to criminalize people being able to go out of the state to get the reproductive health care they need, they can use that as a way to get people in trouble for coming to North Carolina to get the care they need, even though it looks like tomorrow it might not be much of an issue, unfortunately. Last week, there were a lot of happy realtors from at the end of the public comments that were singing the praises of missing middle housing. And I think there's some kind of, based on their comments, there's some kind of interesting take on that, because there are a lot of people that aren't opposed to missing middle housing in itself. They're opposed to having market rate and luxury housing. So if you want a transparent missing middle housing that is affordable to the workers of the city, go right ahead. I'm not going to stand in your way. Not that I could. Finally, and another thing is, Wake Up Wake County is now funded by developers, so isn't it more like Wake Up in the Woods, Wake County? Sorry. Finally, if everybody will please raise your hand if you don't mind, if you have visited one of the Baldwin boroughs in Raleigh, you know, the encampments since the last council meeting. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Teresa Bacombe, Jason Padone, Joseph Hoying, Nicole Williams, Del Monte Crawford, Jenny Hopper, and Leslie Zuninga. So Teresa Bacombe first. Yes.
Thank you for letting me speak. I live at 308 Northeast Street in Oakwood.
Could you speak into the
Sure.
microphone? Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Having worked in research for 25 years, I went out and did some research on rapid transit and its effect on cities. And what I found out is not very good information, or it's not very happy, is that sure, rapid transit can help people get to medical facilities and those kind of things. But according to the Stanford Social Innovation, that rapid transit can also perpetuate inequity. In many communities, for example, expansion of public transit improves quality of life for white, upwardly mobile, carless millennials and suburban commuters, but simultaneously displace low-income communities as area around new transit stations are gentrified with higher-end mixed-use developments. And the city of Denver addressed this issue, and what they did is they came up with a plan that the city, to make sure that people were not pushed out of their neighborhoods, they worked with nonprofits, affordable housing, it was a whole cross-section of profits, so they could address those issues. Also, I found some information. I'm a member of the National Resource Defense Council, and what we do is we fight against climate, trying to help our climate from changing and hurting people, animals, transit and how it affects neighborhoods and health outcomes. And so what they said in here is that developers race one another to erect fancy apartment buildings and condominiums that clear mainly to young professionals, longtime residents of neighborhoods adjacent to established or newly planned transit hubs are increasingly finding themselves priced out of their communities. And what they said that smart cities and smart city developers have realized this, and they have come up with some things that might help. First of all, you have to bring all the people that it affects, you have to bring them to the negotiation table, not public input to a table, because coming from negotiating with the power and strength, that is equity, okay? They said you can implement positive steps to make it equitable for everybody. Allocating HUD-sponsored low-income housing tax credits to developers who meet certain criteria. Creating special housing protection districts. Guaranteeing that no affordable unit or affordable housing will be knocked down without another going up in its place. Those are just some of the things that you could do. Thank you.
Jason Padone.
Good evening. I'm here representing the 50-plus families that Mr. Collins referenced in the Briarcliff neighborhood. It's adjacent to a development being proposed as evidenced by a pre-application conference occurred on January 6, 2023 at 11 a.m. with Robert Tate, Don Belk, and Jason Myers from the city. Properties discussed in this conference include 4801 East Six Forks Road, that's St. Mark's UMC, 4704, 4708 Terry Street, which is owned by the developer. All the reference properties are zoned R4. According to the future use land use map and 2030 comprehensive plan, the recommended height is 3 stories. Also in the comprehensive plan are 2 policies, APMT 11 and 12, which state that the rezoning and building height should be consistent with the area-specific guidance, 3 stories, unless significant public benefits are included, such as stormwater mitigation, carbon reduction, or enhanced public space. In this specific pre-application, the developer was looking for 6 to 8 stories, possibly as much as 12. Department of City Planning recommended 7 or 12. Just to remind you, the guidance is 3 stories for this area. Both are completely out of alignment with the Midtown Zoning Consistency Policy, the height policy, and the future land use map previously referenced in the 2030 plan. This proposed development will have detrimental impacts on our tight-knit community. Traffic, safety, noise pollution, overall quality of life being the primary concerns. We would like a follow-up from the City Planning Office on the significant public benefits that would justify waivers from this reference from the City Planning Office on this reference policies in the comprehensive plan. We have seen the preliminary plans, and we don't see the significant public benefit. The pre-application meeting should have gone as follows, in our opinion. out of alignment with our comprehensive plan, unsuitable for the area. Adjust your proposal accordingly. What is the point of a comprehensive plan if we don't follow it? If you want to see what our city would look like if we don't grow in alignment with our plan, look to the south to Atlanta. It is a traffic-ridden city with declining quality of life. I know because my family and I moved from Atlanta to this great city for that very reason. Is it worth it to devastate a neighborhood and devastate neighborhoods around the city because a developer is ready to build and needs to go big to make it economically viable? And in this case, has a willing partner that unfortunately is in a dire economic situation, which is St. Mark's UMC. Raleigh can continue to be great and growing, but it cannot be at the expense of our existing neighborhoods and our quality of life. Our neighborhoods matter. The families that live in these neighborhoods also matter. We hope Mayor and the council really feel the same way. We look forward to the follow-up, and we have go Canes.
Thank you. Joseph Hoying.
Hello, good evening, Council. This is also similar to Suzanne and Tom in reference to the traffic calming measures that did not pass the balloting, but the project is still going forward, specifically Harps Mill Road that I live on and directly in front of my house. And also the 12 other streets that did not pass, but were moved forward by the Transportation Department and voted on and waived by the City Council. Some of you guys are members of that, some of you guys were not. When I was in middle school, our teacher handed out slips of paper and said that our end of year party was going to be voted on by the class. We could either have a pizza party or an ice cream party, and that created quite the buzz. After all the votes came back, it was determined that an ice cream party had won the vote. Then our teacher included a second vote, brought the other classroom across the hall for a second vote, and it came back the same. Ice cream won again. Boy, were we excited we were going to have that ice cream party at the end of the day. When the day of the party came, there was no ice cream to be seen. Instead, there were two round pizzas, traffic circles, 8 half-shaped pizzas, chicanes, 8 breadsticks, speed humps, and some additional sides, some islands, some pinched intersections, etc. What happened to the vote for ice cream? So we asked, excuse us, teacher, why do we have pizza when we voted for ice cream? And the teacher's response, well, I wanted pizza, so we went with pizza. I thought it was best for you in the class. Obviously, you didn't know what you really wanted when you voted. The entire class was stumped as we saw all the final votes, and we knew that ice cream had won, and the ballots did not show that. That's exactly what residents in Northridge and Harps Mill, along with the other 12 streets in the city of Raleigh, are dealing with currently, as we all went through the examination period, the balloting process, the final voting process. Per the guidelines and balloting policies that were put forth during the examination period that were expressed to everyone that was voting, saying that both the participation percentages and the approval percentages needed to be at a certain threshold. Our street failed twice to meet that criteria to be considered moving forward with the project. But here we are with an even more dangerous situation, as Suzanne had mentioned, on our street. Even though the residents voted for the traffic measures not to be implemented, the Transportation Department requested the balloting to be waived for this and the 12 other streets in the city of Raleigh that did not meet the voting metrics necessary. This is a slap to the face of the residents, a slap in the face to the voting process, and a slap in the face to the taxpayers' money for a project that was voted against and failed voting, but still got pushed through as that's what the teacher wanted. Transportation Department, City of Raleigh did not listen to the constituents and what was voted on. And if there's any question or confusion, Transportation Department and City of Raleigh played the role of the bad teacher. Thank you.
Nicole Williams.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole, unsheltered.
Thank you for coming. Community is very important. You know me from previous meetings, and I've primarily spoken about homelessness, sexual harassment, and an incident with police that left concern. Things are still to be determined, and I'll only ask that if you have any information about the culprits or lead to resolve, contact me at justiceandpeace@mail.com. That's justiceandpeace@mail, not gmail.com. Tonight, I want to address the homelessness of not me, but our senior citizens. Contact that PA. Okay, she's shy. So my friend here with me, let's call her Mrs. C, is in her 60s and she's experienced homelessness for 13 months. She has been in and out of shelters and has no family with whom she can reside. She has a warm spirit and loves people, Los Tigre del Norte, and jalapenos. As spunky and full of life as she may seem at present in most times, I've witnessed her in moments of forgetfulness, which leads to extreme anxiety. I've witnessed her in times behave more very playful and childlike. I've seen her call and cry to her mama, and I believe these to be early signs of dementia, of which she receives no treatment and has no access to care. I mention this not to bring embarrassment, but to bring awareness to the condition of seniors living in homelessness, in addition to their being without a home. No, regardless of family that may be living, some people can't return home due to trauma or recurrence or worse, or they're not welcome. Some can't work because they aren't able due to mental illness or physical disability or other measures that they don't care to discuss. They aren't just lazy people looking for a handout, and if they receive checks, the money may be insufficient for housing, as is the case with many senior citizens here in Raleigh. The number of people in this category may be great, but it's of no intention of their own to be in need. The community's responsibility is to take care of its most vulnerable. Now close your eyes for me. See your elderly loved ones sleeping outside on the hard, dirty, cemented ground with rats and large cockroaches running on top of them. Hear and see them complaining about lack of sleep, being hungry and dropping weight because of lack of food, complaining of their joints always hurting and it being too hot or too cold. See them using the bathroom exposed to voyeurism because they suffer from incontinence and have no access to proper facilities. Think of them losing sleep because they fear someone coming to hurt them. Think of someone trying to take advantage of them or you because of their frailty. It's not okay. So help Mrs. C and other senior citizens awake who are subjected to homelessness or at risk by writing your representatives to urge them to work steadfast to turn this urgent, unnecessary tragedy of homelessness for seniors to a life-saving reality of hope. Thank you.
Del Monte.
Sorry that I'm not prepared. Give me 1 second. Good evening, Council. Good evening, Madam Mayor. I just have one question. When Mr. Eddie Davis was speaking regarding SB 225 and Councilwoman Patton wanted to make a statement, why did you tell her no?
As I said, we'll discuss it later.
But
Thank
you
you.
gave the opportunity for Councilwoman Jones to speak to the resident. With that being said, good evening, Council. Good evening, Councilwoman Black, Jones, and Patton. What a busy week it has been for both you and I. While you all were in Denver, I was championing with the Poor People's Campaign and the North Carolina Black Alliance on reparations, known as reparative injustices, livable wage, housing access. The message was clear that evening. The people of Raleigh are fed up and fired up by the negligence and actions you've done, Madam Mayor, for the past decade. Last month, I sat in a 5-hour afternoon meeting and heard about affordable housing, ADUs, rezoning, but when it came to the Raleigh Human Relations Commission, Madam Mayor, you gave pushback. Why? Let me tell you why. On October 1st, 2022, we attended a Raleigh mayoral forum that was done by the Muslim American Society, and the question was asked, other cities and counties in North Carolina have explored reparations in various forms. Do you support reparations for descendants of people who are enslaved? And I quote, from what you said, we have the legislator that we need to deal with. One of the things that we did right after the whole incident happened with George Floyd, the murder, I would say, we partnered with Shaw University in their Central Federation with social justice, and they gave us a 10-point plan that we could do. Apparently, it did not work. Madam Mayor, in order to move forward with affordable housing, you must accept the fact that you've caused havoc within the local government. This is why I'm asking the council tonight to bring a motion to have Mayor Pro Tem govern this body until his term is over, and have at-large Melton govern the remainder of the term. Your lack of interest and willingness to people earning $45,000 and under is outrageous, and we demand that you leave this session and allow the People's Council to do the work that was intended. Now, Madam Mayor, I wasn't too honored that I had to suspend my Lieutenant Governor campaign because I knew that I could work within the state of council, but there was a great man by the name of Jonathan Melton that said, "We're not here to make friends. We're here to change the city." That's why, Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to see you on the campaign trail.
I look forward to that. Thank you. Jenny Harper. Is Jenny here? Okay.
As I imagine that many can empathize with, pandemic disruptions made it very difficult to stay abreast as to our rapidly changing city. So personally, my return to civic engagement has really just happened over the last year or so. One of the things that I notice at every one of these meetings that I've been attending is that there is a nearly palpable tension, a buzz, if you will, that is expressed by a broad constituency of citizens representing a wide array of demographics. The overarching sense that I get from these brief moments to come before you is that people are fearful. They are anxious, they are frustrated, and they're overwhelmed. What you do or don't do at this table truly, truly matters. Comments largely seem to center around concerns about affordable housing, gentrification, the loss of historic sites and resources that we all tend to gravitate towards, even visitors who come to visit us for the first time. It's why you had 141 people signed up to speak out against one case last month, nearly 40 tonight. It's why people are frightened about the repercussions of the Transit Overlay District. Repeated themes centering on disenfranchisement, displacement, loss of naturally occurring affordable housing, loss of irreplaceable historic assets and sense of place. It is the same concerns that you've heard over and over again in regards to Shaw's rezoning request. What happens to thousands of people irreparably impacted by just one zoning decision, one that is nebulous and really has no plan for that matter. Now,
Jenny?
This is not about that rezoning case whatsoever,
Okay,
but it
thank
is
you.
relative to what I said. There's also concerted efforts to dismantle Prince Hall, the city's first historic overlay district dedicated to Black history. To learn that there are now murmurings of requests by forces over in Oberlin to be removed from the boundaries of their HOD and subsequently rezoned is a truly disturbing trend, and I dare say you would not see this happening over in Oakwood or Boylan Heights. It's not far-fetched to consider why that is, no matter who is leading the charge of dismantling or who it ultimately benefits. Density, transit-oriented development, missing middle, infill, change are not inherently bad in any way. In fact, it's quite the opposite, and we need to look at a variety of all of those tools. The issue is that people, namely what will happen to them, how do they fit into the city's future? How can they still exist here? The focus instead relies upon bird's eye maps, highlighted boundary lines, and formulas entirely devoid of consideration for the actual people here now on those parcels. It's also that our built past is so inconsequential and disposable despite long-standing city policies that state otherwise. Physical reminders that provide us with naturally occurring affordable housing, but also affordable commercial spaces, and give the added benefit of providing lessons and a better understanding about where we came from, even the shameful moments, so that we are better informed and we move towards the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Leslie Zuniga.
Good evening. My name is Les Siniga, and I reside in the extraterritorial jurisdiction expansion area 5 of the Raleigh Southeast Special Area Study dated September the 22nd. I would like the Southeast Special Area Study to be amended to include a proposal for the installation of a community residential sanitary sewage collection and treatment system that will collect and dispose of my residential sewage in a more environmentally maintenance-free and sustainable manner. I live in the subdivision of Stonewater. My residence is located 6 miles from the Neuse River Resource Recovery Facility that can treat 50 million gallons of sewage per day. I live within 1.1 miles of a sewage force main that runs to this sewage treatment plant. And I live approximately 1,000 feet from a Carolina Water Service residential community sewage manhole that services the subdivision of Kings Grant, which is contiguous to the Stonewater subdivision. Yet the only alternative for the disposal of residential sewage in Stonewater is in a subterraneous manner by septic tank and drain field, which is not sustainable, requires maintenance, and is the most frequently reported source of groundwater contamination in the United States. In addition, I would like the Raleigh Southeast Special Area Study dated September the 22nd to be amended to include a proposal for the installation of a backup generator on the potable water supply that currently supplies us drinking water. Currently, Stonewater potable water is provided by Aqua through wells and pressure tanks. The tanks are not elevated, so when electrical power is lost, Stonewater residents do not have any water to drink, to flush toilets, or fight a fire. I've been told by North Carolina Environmental the backup generator is not required on potable water supplies. Not requiring backup generators on non-elevated potable water supplies does not seem like a correct decision. Any assistance you could provide would be most appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager, could we follow up on this? Okay, thank you. All right, that is the end of public comment this evening. I'm going to ask for a brief break, and then we will resume the public hearings. Thank you. So whoever would like to leave, now would be the appropriate time while we're on break. Thank you. if everyone could please take a seat. Please ask everybody to take a seat, and let's have some quiet so we can begin the first of our 5 public hearings tonight. First, we have annexation petition AX 2122 at 7640 Oak Hill Drive.
Thank you very much. Ira Mabel, Planning and Development. That annexation request, the public hearing is still open, as is the one for the next item, rezoning Z3822. Those are for the same property. You may remember earlier this afternoon, you scheduled the public hearing for a development agreement between the owner of this property and the applicant and the city in regards to Forestville Park, which is adjacent. So staff recommends that you hold these hearings open also for the 16th so that you can consider all 3 items together as the most appropriate course of action.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
Does anybody have any questions on that process? Okay. All right. Do we need a motion to hold these open to the 16th and consider all 3 items at once?
We do have people signed up in support and opposition, and out of respect for their time, I'm hoping we can give them.
I don't see anybody signed up in support, and I see one person signed up in opposition, but I believe they spoke at the hearing, because this is in continuation.
I see Leslie Zuniga signed up in support and DeMonte Crawford in opposition for the annexation.
I have no one signed up in support. Do I not?
She had withdrawn and moved over to the public comments earlier.
Oh, understood. Okay. I don't think Del Monte spoke in opposition to this particular annexation in the past.
Where's DeMonte? Did you speak last time? Please. Well, the hearing's still open, so we'll hear from you. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Pretty simple. Councilwoman Patton and I do just ask that we push this to a later date. That way, I don't necessarily live in District B, but I too would like to kind of look at it. And if there are 3 things rolled up in one, I would like this to be pushed over. Also, I went on the bike ride with you virtually, but I had I had the ability to look around your district, and I was able to see mixed housing. You had your apartments, your townhomes, your single-family homes. You even had the middle school, Wake Tech. So I feel like with this particular one, if we could just push it to a later date, that way I can kind of review it a little bit more, see if it actually works in that area. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Patton, do you have a motion then?
Yes, I move to move this public hearing to March 16th. Move the annexation, hold the annexation hearing open until March 16th.
May 16th.
May 16th, y'all.
That's fine.
As well as the rezoning.
And move the rezoning also to May 16th.
Second.
Okay. So both are held open to be considered with the 3rd item. Clarification. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Next, we have rezoning Z5422.
Thanks. This rezoning was considered, or the public hearing was opened in January and then was referred to the Safe, Vibrant, Healthy Community Committee. the conclusion of that discussion, the applicant and the city resumed some preliminary talks that had happened for also a development agreement. So we do have an update on that. I think that was the sort of marching order, was to come back at this date with update for that. So Ken Bowers will come up later. I do have a brief recap of just the zoning case to remind us all of what the request is. So 2.6 acres on P Street and West Street, currently zoned IX12. This is an aerial of the site. So the development agreement is related to Smoky Hollow Park property. And I will, again, be very brief just to remind us what these are. So some prohibited uses, condition number 1. Number 2 is prohibiting parking between any buildings and the park. Number 3 is requiring pedestrian connectivity to the park. Number 4 is requiring a public plaza adjacent to the park. And number 5 is a cap on office uses. It is consistent with the comp plan. Planning Commission recommends approval. Again, go very quickly. Ken Bowers will now give you an update of where the talks have been for the development agreement.
Thanks. Good evening. Ken Bowers, Planning and Development. So to recap, it was the recommendation of the committee for staff to continue negotiations with the applicant for a development agreement whereby they would partner with the city in the construction of Smoky Hollow Park and contribute to its budget. So we have continued those discussions. We are closing in on a term sheet, and I hope that at your next meeting or the meeting thereafter, we will be prepared to provide on the agenda the detailed term sheet, which is several pages long. But I wanted to give a brief overview of highlights as to where we seem to be landing so far. So as was represented at the committee meeting, the basic outline is that the developer would construct the park and be reimbursed by the city for doing the construction from the committed sources. But the committed sources would not be increased beyond where they are in the parks bond and stormwater money. And we would expect to have some savings in time cost and, of course, staff savings in terms of not having to do the construction administration in-house from that arrangement. The developer would gain some certainty and control over the park construction and the ability to do the park and the building and coordinate those two projects that are in a fairly constrained area. The agreement would spell out a minimum and maximum contribution, financial contribution from the developer to the park budget. Eventually, that would close in on a specific number that would be the target for the schematic design. But the purpose of that is to, on the one hand, protect the developer from cost overruns. On the other hand, ensure that a certain amount of money was committed from the developer to the park. We expect a collaborative process on the park design. Schematic design is a city-driven process. It has a public component to it. We are interested in collaborating on the interface between the development and the park to maximize benefits for both. But the city, because it is a city park facility, would reserve the final say on the park elements, including if in order to meet that target budget, certain elements had to be redesigned or removed. So that would be a city decision. I'm going to show a couple maps after this. We're contemplating selling a strip of land adjacent to the applicant's assembled site to enlarge it a little bit. This is not determined to be needed for the park amenities themselves. Some of it is constrained by some slope that would make it difficult to incorporate into the park, but it's potentially of use to the development. That would, of course, be sold at market value, and the proceeds, we believe, would be sufficient to make a substantial contribution to the city's affordable housing fund, as well as also helping to supplement the park budget on an as-needed basis. The remedies, if for any reason there's not performance on the agreement, that is, too much time has elapsed and it's clear that our development partner is not moving forward on the construction, we would then take the project over and do it through the traditional bid process, and they would make a larger financial contribution in that case, larger than what would be committed if they were doing the construction. So that's basically where the terms sit today. This is a map that just shows the maximum extent of the strip of land, and we're still looking at environmental and other factors as to what is the right boundary. But everything to the right of the strip is part of the city-owned property. Everything to the left is part of the applicant's property. And we've coordinated with the leads from Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources who are leading the park project. They do not anticipate a negative impact on the program or amenities from selling this small piece of land. If anything, it'll actually remove some maintenance responsibilities from the park and put them on the private side of the property line, and has the potential to, with the extra space, enhance the park development interface. So that's where that is. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions of Ken?
I don't know if
Councilmember
Ken.
Fort?
I'm sorry. Don't know if Ken is the right person, but where are we with update as it relates to remediation on this particular site?
So we are. There was, obviously the environmental studies that were done as part of the master planning or the concept plan, the vision plan process. I believe, Jake, do you have a little bit more specific information? Is that's an early
Stephen
phase of the
Bentley
next phase of the process?
Stephen Bentley is
Stephen
also
Bentley
here.
is here.
and
Okay,
can-
thank you, Stephen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Stephen Bentley, Raleigh Parks. We're in the process of developing the remedial action plan, so we've done a considerable amount. We did the phase 1 and phase 2. And some of the early things we're going to do is remove the tanks and then save the more significant remediation as a part of the construction process. So we've been working with our attorneys in the state of North Carolina on an incremental approach, but we'll do it all at one time.
Does that answer your question?
I'm not sure, but I'll talk to Stephen offline.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for Ken? Okay, I think at the time this was sent back to the full council, we asked that a development agreement be negotiated. We said we would bring this forward and keep the hearing open and then monitor the progress. At the time when a new development agreement is proposed, we will open that up for public hearing because that will be new information. And we'll get new feedback, and we'll see where we go from there. So I was going to recommend that we defer this to our next meeting in June. And I think, Ken, at the time you said it could take 3 to 4 months for the agreement to take place, but we said we want to at least let the public know where we are in the process. So that's where I am. Councilmember Harrison.
I do believe there are members of the public here to speak, and I'd like to give them that time. So to at least put 4 minutes on the clock on both the pro and con.
Well, we have to have equal time for both sides then. I'll do 2 minutes for each side. And I don't know that anybody from the applicant side has anything to say at this point. You're in negotiation.
I'm sorry, how much time?
2.
Let's do 4. I think how many people have signed up? Is it 4 individuals?
Yeah, but they've already had time to speak at the public hearing, and then unlimited time to speak at both of the committee meetings. So we probably have devoted over at least an hour and a half in both instances to this. And there's nothing new that can be said until we have that development agreement.
I'm going to motion for 4 minutes on each side just because there is still a lot to discuss when it comes to the form of the building. I think beyond the development agreement, the essential form of this site is very important to the neighbors. So I want to make sure that we have that time. So I'm going to make that motion for 4
Second.
on both sides.
Is that allowed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can I just point something out real quick? How many people actually, because I think some of the people that signed up are not here. Like Lisa, I did not see Lisa at public comment, and I think she's on the public hearing list. So there may not be 4 people here, so we may want to ask that first. Well, yeah, I know there. I'm just trying to figure out how many are here.
I know Roy's here. I saw him. Is Mama Kai still here? She's still here. Tracy Sire, CYR. And I don't see Lisa. 3 minutes.
The motion was 4. Can we finish the motion?
I'm asking. Jane. Oh, sorry.
I'm going to keep the motion at 4 just because it takes people a little bit of time just to start talking.
All right, well, we'll start with that, and then we'll go to the applicant. We'll go to the applicant after those comments are made. So, Roy, there's 4 minutes on the clock. Don't use all the time because there are 2 more people.
Mayor, City Council, it's good to be up here again. Unfortunately, still talking about the same rezoning case that we've been talking about for months. We went to committee. In committee, absolutely nothing was resolved. There was absolutely no fixing of the issues that were an issue for the neighborhood with the height of this building. So you're considering a rezoning that defies logic and reason. It has no policy or planning justification. It contradicts many plans, past staff, and planning commission recommendations on a site that was already upzoned without any public input. It's being considered because the developer is offering to help fund and build a park that is likely to be built anyway. Considering this rezoning based on funding is not only wrong, but it would send a dangerous precedent, and the optics are terrible for our city. There's not a single policy that would support over 12 stories on this site. The comprehensive plan is very clear. 12 stories would violate 17 different policies, 9 major policies, 2 tables, 3 definitions, including the definition of the central business district. Policymakers we've talked to in the last few weeks who helped form these policies said that transition policies and historic policies were made to help protect neighborhoods like ours from developments exactly like this one. The data is overwhelmingly against 12 stories. The site is no longer transit. The northern route of the bus rapid transit route has been moved to Capitol Boulevard. Therefore, the transit station, the only published one, is more than a quarter mile away. The site is general, 12 stories maximum. It would set a dangerous precedent to disregard families, neighborhoods, and at the edge of downtown and around transit stations and zones, as we've heard from others. It was already upzoned from 4 to 12 stories by City Council, including Mary Baldwin, who was a city councilman at the time, city councilwoman at the time, without any public comment, despite staff and planning commission recommendations of 5 stories. So the maximum allowed height was already given to this developer and this landowner. More than 12 stories is completely inappropriate. Funding cannot justify sacrificing neighborhoods for this type of development. In the last 7 years, 70,000 housing units have been added to our potential inventory through rezoning done by council. That's more than needed for our growth rate. It removes any justification for additional units or height. Considering this rezoning based on funding is not only wrong, it would set a very dangerous precedent.
So we have 2 others left to speak. There's 1 minute and 19 seconds. So if you would please reserve some time for Tracy. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say, I'm curious about who y'all are zoning for. Who is this for? I sat through the meeting earlier today about Lake Wheeler and Maywood. I just found out about another business that's going to be annihilated. There's one up off of Wake Forest Road. I don't understand. Small business is what fuels America. All these new developments all these apartment buildings have empty storefront properties right here in downtown. Who are you making these decisions for? What about all those small businesses that are getting knocked out and have nowhere to go, but potentially out of Raleigh? And so I'm just curious, because if there's a demographic that should be protected, it's those who are actually working and paying their taxes here, and they're small businesses, because they're the ones that make America work, and we know that. The last thing is, with all this development that's going on, it makes Raleigh a very unfamily friendly place. This is not a place for people to bring their children. You keep wanting to build parks, but the only actual like exciting place to go for children is Marbles, which you can only do for so long. So y'all need to start thinking about the people who actually make Raleigh work, and that's small businesses and families. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have a development agreement to discuss yet, so I'm going to ask that we defer the case to our meeting in June, where we'll get an update. Oh, yeah, but I'm going to ask that we defer this case to that first meeting in June. We'll see where we are. We'll get another update on the development agreement. And Ken, that works with the timing? Just want to make sure that works with the timing.
Yes. We should be in a position to give you an
update.
The long form term sheet, which we would present in more detail, and then if those terms are acceptable, then that would provide us with the ability to go on to the next step, which would be to start working with the applicant to draft the legal agreement.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to say anything at this time? You would have 4 minutes.
Mac Paul here on behalf of Raleigh Development Company, the applicant. As you said, there has been a lot of discussion in committee and the January hearing, and most of that revolved around the comprehensive plan, which is the arbiter for a proposal that comes before you. And the comprehensive plan is an evolving document. It's changed, it's modified. So that's what staff has evaluated. And there was a lot of conversation in committee and painstaking discussion going through that. And I think we all have to recognize it's a guide. It's not like definitive. It's not a code. So it's subject to interpretation. And that's, what the council has to do. And we've made our points, so I'm not going to rehash. I do want to point out, though, it was not reflected in the presentation, but we did present it at the committee meeting that one out of the conversations with the community, we've heard that it's really the building height, not so much the stories. And we did propose to lower the heights in 2 stages on the site down to 250 feet, which is, according to some of the diagrams that have been produced, about the height of a little 30 feet taller than what would be allowed in a 12-story zoning, and got feedback from the committee on that. So we're committed to that. I think there was a comment in the committee to try to dial in a little more on the building footprints and some of the diagrams that showed where the development could occur, but not necessarily the condition was more broad than that. So, we're prepared to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll make a formal motion that Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah. I would actually like to make a motion, but first I want to talk a little bit about the form. For me, this case has been tough. It is a challenging area in terms of looking at what is appropriate on the site. We've had a lot of conversation back and forth. In the committee meeting, I learned a lot, and I really appreciate the conversation there, but we did not come to a conclusion when it comes to form and what is appropriate. As I read the comprehensive plan, what I see are 3 areas that are talked about. We have core transit areas, we have edge areas, and we have general areas. So core transit, that's the core of a mixed-use center, so like the heart of the central business district, or corridors that are programmed for high-capacity, frequent bus transit. Those heights are recommended to range from 3 to 40 stories. So that's like right where we are today in the main part of downtown. We also have edge areas. So those are the areas right next to low to moderate density residential areas like the Glenwood, Brooklyn neighborhood. So those are typically within 150 feet. And permitted heights there don't exceed 4 stories. So if you look at the west side of West Street, which is right behind this neighborhood. So what I see is between the edge and the core transit area is what we call the general area. And so this is a max height of 12 stories. That's the title of this, Typology in the Comprehensive Plan General Area. And this is how the site was rezoned less than 10 years ago. And so I just can't see where we can get to 30 stories here, given the comprehensive plan guidelines. And I don't want to move us further down this path, talking about the park, because I think we are getting away from the essential question of whether the form is appropriate. I really do. I appreciate the potential for this site. As currently zoned for 12 stories, it would contribute to a wonderful, dense, walkable community. And I still hope that we will have a partnership with the applicant, if they so choose, on the park. I know we already have $14 million set aside with city funds for the park, including our bond monies. And I look forward to future development agreements, but I do not want to confuse the issue here. So with that, I do motion to deny the case. And I can read the motion entirely. I guess we may need to close the case, though, first. I'm not sure.
Yes, we would need to close the case.
Would need to do that.
Close the hearing.
So I'll motion to close the hearing first.
So before we do that, I'm just going to say, there's no conversation about denial of this. We had directed this to move forward with a development agreement. This puts the park in jeopardy. And also, I'm sure the folks in Glenwood South are going to have some deep concerns. They've been lobbying for that park for 10 years. So I have some real concerns. I'm not going to vote to deny this, but I will close the hearing, and if you would like to make that motion, please do.
So motion to close, that was seconded. And
No,
then
I
closed
closed
it.
the
Okay,
hearing.
closed. Okay, thank you. So I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated May 2, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to deny the zoning amendment.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Corey, where are you?
So this one's interesting because we talked and there was never any conversation one way or the other. So I'm trying to understand all of this now. But I will say this, out of respect of being the district council person, I will support this out of respect of you being the district council person for that case.
Can I say something too?
But I would appreciate too, conversation, meaningful conversation.
Heads up.
I've tried to have that with all of you on all of our cases, especially the next case. But I guess things are different now.
Councilmember Melton?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain my vote too, because it's not that I don't support Councilmember Harrison. I share a lot of the concerns that you raised. I've expressed those to the applicant, and I know I've met with the neighbors too. I would have given it another month to see if we could have come to some resolution. But ultimately, my vote really doesn't matter because it carries either way, but that was not out of disrespect to you. I hear you. You've done a lot of work on it. I've shared a lot of those concerns publicly, but I would have given it another month. But I respect your judgment.
So that was 6-2 to deny with myself and Councilmember Melton not in favor. Thank you. All right, next we have Z 5922.
Good evening. This is
We will take a minute before we resume.
So this request, Z5922, 26.5 acres Strong University, hearing held from last month. There has been no update to the case. So again, I will do a relatively brief recap, although the conditions in this one are a little bit more complicated. So there is a mix of maximum building heights in various portions, all zoned downtown mixed use, but for one small piece in the corner there. Just an aerial. So again, I will recap briefly the conditions. The prohibiting of uses, number one. Number two is an exhibit, which is a slide later about step backs in certain portions of the site. 3, 4, and 5 require preservation or sometimes preservation or relocation of 6 named historical structures on the site. So this is that exhibit I mentioned about the step back. And these are those historic structures. So we can go back to reference this later if you like. Number 6 is basically accounting for unforeseen damage to those buildings. Number 7 requires some amount of shared parking in the structured parking. And then there's a number of transportation related ones. Number 8 is requiring a traffic study. And number 9 also requiring a traffic study. There's 10 and 11 require different easements for bus stops of different sizes. 12 and 13 require pedestrian access or in 13 a public street. Number 14 requires, and 15 require bike share stations. And then number 16 requires vibration equipment to be installed near certain structures also. This is an overview of the transportation related items. Consistent with the comprehensive plan, although inconsistent with the future land use map. So approval would trigger an amendment to Central Business District. There is an RHDC recommendation for denial and a Planning Commission recommendation for approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions before you resume the hearing.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
So there's been, I have had conversation with quite a few of my council members. And out of that, there's been concerns around the community engagement for a master plan, monitoring of the vibration study, and also, you know, I understand the university is not looking to sell any of the property, but other council members have concerns about sale of any of this property. And I would like for the applicant to have some more time to address these concerns in a manner that my fellow council members have more understanding of what's going on and what's taking place. I do realize that there is another outside issue that has nothing to do with the rezoning. But I will say I understand the concerns about the mosque and access to the mosque. But I will say this, if the rezoning is approved or the rezoning is denied, that is a separate issue that this council does not have any say over. So with that, I know some people signed up. I'm assuming you probably 4 minutes each. I'll let you go from there.
I'm going to do what we did last time. There's a number of people who signed up in opposition. You will go after those who have signed up in support. Please pick a couple of spokespeople to come up and speak on your behalf. One thing I will note, Mayor Pro Tem, I was told that a draft agreement was sent to the nonprofit group regarding the mosque for some type of agreement for usage, and I believe that was sent Monday. So I guess there's continued conversations that will happen there. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people signed up to speak in support, and I'm going to let you decide whose that's going to be. It's Gaston Williams, Zohar Ominous, Matt Paul, Letitia Shapiro, Paulette Dillard, Doggin Pitts, and Dan Blue III.
Council Mayor, I'm
Gaston,
Gaston Williams,
it's
and I'll try to
4
coordinate
minutes.
with the others.
Okay. Don't Yes. Don't take all the time.
I will not. This is so important that we get this right. It's so important that we work together to get this right because there's a lot at stake. I'm trying to synopsize. Several memos are written by the RHDC. We are your advisory body on historic preservation. The most recent memo you've received electronically is 4 pages. Pages 2, 3, and 4 have the specific recommendations we make. We do not oppose 96% of what Shaw wants to do. We vigorously oppose 4% if it doesn't include very specific preservation measures for historic properties. These are our recommendations. We offer solutions that will protect historic sites and show a path forward for Shaw. Everyone in this room wants Shaw to prosper, succeed, and go forward. No one wants them to fail. But they do not have to destroy their own history to do it. The points that we talk about are also endorsed by the State Historic Preservation Office. The recommendation is...
Gaston, there's like 2.5 minutes left.
Okay.
And so if you could share these with us, can we do that?
Yes,
'Cause
that would
then
be
we
fine,
can
Mayor, and I'd like to reserve an
have-
opportunity perhaps if you hold this over to another time to present because it's a very complicated issue.
Yes.
But the two points. One is we do not oppose the use of non-historic properties, but we need additional protections for historic properties.
Okay, thank you.
Does that work?
Yes, and
Okay.
we have an email from you, and we have the stuff that we've read from the Historic District Commission.
Sure.
So we have that on hand.
And we invite an opportunity to actually speak because
Yes.
although we were at the table in discussions, we were not at the room where it happened later.
Could you put that back at 2.45, please? Who else would like to speak?
We're really here to answer questions that you might have. As Councilor Branch said, there are several items that have been discussed in the past few weeks since the last hearing. We recognize there are a lot of issues swirling around. Some go back quite a ways. Some have things to do with the zoning case. Some don't have anything to do. And I appreciate the effort to kind of get grounded in the zoning case and the issues that have been mentioned. And we just would like to hear those and get specific directions so we have a path to address them. We do have Dan Blue here with us. You mentioned that there is this kind of separate issue going on. And again, if you have questions and want more information about the issue with the mosque or others, we're happy to answer those.
Councilmember Fort.
I would like to hear from Mr. Blue. I do think I see him back in the corner. So.
Good evening. I'm Dan Blue III. My firm serves as outside general counsel to Shaw University, so I'm familiar with the history of negotiations with the mosque, and the university's asked me just to provide a brief update on where we stand with that engagement in those negotiations. The short answer is that while we've made tremendous progress, we believe, and the conversations have been fruitful, the mosque congregation and Shaw University are still at odds. The negotiations remain at an impasse. Now, for context, this is not a new issue, and the university and the mosque congregation have been at an impasse for over 20 years. I realize that it's new to you, and that the rezoning has brought this to light, but the fact of the matter is that there is a fundamental disagreement, and it's not necessarily a hostile disagreement, but it's a disagreement over the rights and obligations of Shaw and the general public with regard to this physical space on Shaw's campus, on Shaw's land, that's part of Shaw's holdings. And it's safe to say that both sides agree, more or less, that this is probably something that has to be resolved through litigation. Now, we generally at Shaw make sure that everyone who's using the campus that's not faculty or students enter into a lease. That lease sets the rights and responsibilities, the obligations, and the various terms and conditions of using the university space. We have leases with organizations such as the American Baptist Churches of the South. They too have to have a signed lease in order to use parts of the campus. Usually our disagreement comes down to having a lease that looks like a commercial lease, but more importantly, a lease that has a begin date and an end date. Shaw does not give permanent leases for property that it has, and that's been a source of friction. Now, we have presented a lease. We've worked with the mosque congregation to try to find terms that are acceptable. But again, this is something that's been ongoing. I would expect that it will continue as we try to find a happy medium. But the mosque remains open to faculty and student. We simply want to make sure that everyone else has a lease.
Yes, time. Dan, I have a question for you.
I apologize for the time.
Yeah, I have a question for you. I was going to follow up. When was an agreement given to them, a potential?
The last agreement was given on Monday.
Yesterday?
Yes, yesterday.
Okay, so when do you anticipate the next meeting?
It's currently in the congregation's hands.
In the nonprofit's hands?
Yes, the nonprofit's hands.
Okay. All
I
right.
do have one follow-up.
Councilmember Fort?
Mr. Blue, I also want to clarify.
Please, could we have quiet so we can hear the speaker and hear each other? And let's be respectful. Thank you.
Just want to clarify that the issues with the mosque are not directly related to the rezoning. That's an issue separate and apart from what the university is planning.
Correct. And this is not the first or the last lease that we've gone back and forth over.
Okay. So I just want to be clear that this is not a part of the rezoning case. So
we don't view it as such.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman, please, let's be respectful so we can all ask our questions here. Thank you. Councilmember Patton.
Awesome. Thank you. I understand that this situation is separate and apart from the rezoning, and I hope that you all will find a reasonable understanding with one another, that a cost-sharing agreement or some sort of thing that's amenable to both parties. In the course of studying this case, though, I have become aware that it was sort of a significant historical event that the mosque even kind of came to be, that it took a great deal of collaboration between the city and Shaw and the benefactors. And so I think there could be a way to speak to community concerns by addressing what might happen in the event of redevelopment, that there might be a way to allocate a comparable amount of square footage to a similar purpose that serves the Muslim community. So I'd like you to consider that.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Mr. Blue or? For the applicant. Okay, one question for the applicant. Thank you.
I was wondering, I know that we've been talking, Mac, recently, just about the questions that we were looking at conditions, and I was wondering if you can just put on the table what you understand as what the concerns are so that we're all on the same page and it's not confusing as to what you think we want and all that, so we have it all on the table.
Thank you. So there are three issues. One is kind of multi-part that I understand from the conversations. First, which we heard, was a desire for some written commitment related to community meetings through any master plan process. There's precedent for that in the city, and I think the applicant is certainly willing to commit to that. Another one related to the monitoring of vibrations. The situation being a little different where you have, and this is again a condition that's been used in other cases where there's either a historic structure or a development in really close proximity to another building. And I think maybe the concern is that if development occurs on Shaw's campus, it's not like another development doing the development. So is there a way to have like a third party be a part of that reporting, monitoring? I think there's a way to address that as well. And then the third, again, is sort of a multi-part issue, but it really is a concern over a potential sale of property. As you've heard, I think at length, that Shaw and the model that's being pursued, which has been used by lots of governments and universities, is a long-term land lease, which really allows an institution that exists for hundreds of years not to sell its asset. And the finances of it are such that you really can derive almost 100% of the value through a long-term land lease, so that there's a real good reason to keep ownership and control of the property. So concern, what happens if there's a sale? And so there's sort of two facets, I think, to this question. One is a concern of their Shaw going away or selling his property, and it doesn't have a community benefit. The other is to try to create a little more certainty around Shaw deriving the benefit, or the public deriving a benefit, through a commitment to do like student housing or faculty housing within a certain number of projects. As you've heard, they have a lot of lists of like needs on campus. Housing is the very top of that. So I think it's, from what I'm here, it's coming from a place of wanting to just have more certainty that Shaw is going to benefit. And if, God forbid, something happens, there's a way to make sure that there is some community benefit that comes out of it.
I just want to make sure.
Are there
that
any
that is-
additional concerns that you would like to voice at this time, or was that captured accurately from the conversations?
Yeah, I think that well captures a lot of the brainstorming. I would encourage you to be creative and collaborative across the city attorney's office, city planning staff, and the community themselves to, if some of those brainstorms don't lead to a winner, then let's keep working at it. But what I would say is we've got these disparate groups who still have concern, and the theme amongst them is certainty. So we've got the Muslim community, the alumni community, and the preservationists, who all are looking to tighten up the components of the conditions that are making them itchy about the case. I think we all want to support this case enthusiastically. We all want Shaw to be wildly, wonderfully successful. And so I also understand that some of the things we're asking you to bring back to us, these greater degree of certainty, are complex. So if you're not able to bring them back in 2 weeks, I think it is difficult on the community when we bring this back and it's not quite ready. So if you need to hold it longer than 2 weeks, I certainly encourage you to do that, because I realize these aren't simple asks.
And I just want to uplift one more thing. We've had, and I've been keeping track of them, almost 600 emails regarding Shaw over the last month and a half. And I want to make sure that it's echoed here that from all of these different groups, that the message that I have heard is that they don't feel part of the conversation. They don't feel included. And so I want to emphasize that as counselors, we are here to represent the community, and we are here to make sure that voices matter and that they're heard. I want to help you guys. Our job is to make sure that you guys can have a fruitful conversation. We're not making the decision. I want you guys to make the decision, and then hopefully we can just see it through. But I just want to uplift that we've had a lot of community input here, and I'm really proud of that, and I want to continue that. So thank you.
Thank you. So next, we will hear from, this is going to be difficult now. You have 4 minutes, the opposition. I have many people who have signed up to speak. So if maybe before anybody starts speaking, you decide who is going to speak.
I just need 1 minute. Can I ask a clarifying question, please?
Wait a minute.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Hold on 1 second, please. Is there anyone else who wants to speak?
You have Nigel.
Okay,
Michael.
Nigel, if you could come up, please. Anyone else? And your name, sir?
Michael Hall.
Okay. Okay, so it'll be the three of you then speaking. You said you will need 1 minute, and you
Probably
have a
90 seconds. I have a clarifying question, though.
Okay.
Why is the mosque being separated from the rezoning? Why?
I'll have the.
I mean, just because they say it, don't make it true.
I'll have the city attorney address that. Could we go back to 4 minutes, please?
So I think that the city attorney has already given the opinion that the law does not allow the city to regulate on issues of religion. And the conditions that apply in any zoning case must be conditions that the city can enforce. And so in this case, the communications between folks who represent a religious entity and the applicant need to be taken outside of the zoning context. So it's a legal issue. It's compliant with the law, not only in zoning, but in the federal constitutional requirements.
Okay, that's the answer
So,
to
okay,
your
my next
question.
question
Now,
is,
hold on.
are
Now
y'all
we're gonna
moving this meeting to something,
Sir, we're going to start the 4 minutes now. You had your question answered. You said you had 1 minute, so if we could start, and if you could start with your name, please, for the record.
Eugene Myrick, Shaw University graduate. We can modernize without commercializing the university. If we rezone to this, it would be irreversible, detrimental to the African American community that predominantly resides in Southeast Raleigh. It says a lot that there are no Shaw alum that's scheduled on this side to speak tonight. The National Alumni Association is not in support of this rezoning. We already provided 2,000 signatures. We have another 1,000 signatures, over 2,500 alumni that are in opposition of this rezoning. In addition to that, I have a copy of Shaw University's charter, the actual handwritten charter, which states that, and I quote, "The land so conveyed to them for uses and purposes of an educational institution." It goes on to say, should be perpetually devoted to education purposes. For those that don't know, perpetually means in a way that never ends or changes. This is an actual copy of the charter. With that being said, so it might not even be legal to do this. So with that being said, to resort us to, I don't know, 16 minutes of hearing is, I think that's outrageous. We heard of lesser cases already going to committee. I don't understand. We know there's an educator here. I don't know. I mean, what is your committee, Dr. Growth and something? We dealing with flooding. It's an environmental issue in Southeast Raleigh.
You're using up time for the others.
The charter says perpetually institutional.
Thank you. Hold that, please. If you could put back the time to 2 minutes and 30 seconds, please.
Nigel Edwards on behalf of the King Khalid Mosque located on the grounds of Shaw University. A day before the last public hearing, the university officials wanted to meet with us. You all were not fooled by that. You did not see that as engagement with the actual community. So since then, we were ready to meet on April 5th, the day after. The university was not ready until April 14th. And then yesterday, at 2:24, we got a rough draft of a memorandum of understanding. Don't be fooled, that is not engagement either. It's clear to me that we cannot have engagement if it's just between us and the university. We need the Planning Commission involved as well, and a master plan. We need the services of the city for that purpose that we were not made available to the first time. So please let us do that and have actual engagement, and then go from there. Thank you.
My name is Michael Hall, and I represent a strong contingency of Shaw University alumni that, of course, we want to see Shaw grow, and we want the best things to happen for Shaw University. And at this time, we want to see Shaw become a vital part of the surrounding community. But unfortunately, we don't have a vote of confidence in the administration, the leadership of the administration right now, nor do we have a vote of confidence in the executive committee of the Board of Trustees. And that's why we're imploring you to vote no. And so we can have a dialogue with the university that will produce a better outcome. So we are asking you to vote no, because of that situation and the fact that we don't have confidence in the people that put the rezoning application in.
There's 24 seconds left if someone else would like to speak. Come on up. Please give your name for the record.
My name is Ahmed Khalil, and my question is simple to the legal aid. How come religion is not considered part of history? The definitions for a historical building is because it matters to people. This building has a history, it matters to people. If it is 50 years history or 30 years history, it's still history and it matters to that many people. So that should be taken into consideration by the university. Thank you.
Okay, so Mayor Pro Tem?
Madam Mayor, I move that we hold this case and hold it open until May 16th.
I'm going to ask a question first before we jump to the 16th. Does that give the applicant enough time to draft conditions for us to consider?
They have to be in by Friday.
They would have to be in by Friday.
I think it'd be difficult to have the city attorney's office have a chance to thoroughly review. As we heard, a couple of the concepts are complex. We're committed to work diligently on that, but I want to make sure you don't have multiple more meetings on this. So we want to come back with everything thoroughly vetted.
June 6th. I'm fine with June 6th.
June 6th, we also have our budget public hearing. That could be a very packed evening. Yeah, on June 6th, right?
May 16th is when we're presenting the story, and then we have the budget.
So
Budget hearing.
June 20th?
June 20th?
That's fine, June 20th. Yeah.
Okay, let's bring this back then. If you would make a motion then for
I
June.
move for June 20th.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you. That will be moved to June 20th. And we have one more hearing, everybody, so if you could leave quietly, it would be appreciated. This is TCZ 8922 Lewisburg Road. Staff could be prepared to address this.
Document that I gave you.
I know I said I was very much going to get everything about, sorry, that's okay. For like, but I will work
I'm trying to reach out to the different leaders that are Muslim leaders in each of your districts. Try to gather who would like to work with this position, and then get back to you with like property. So yeah, and I appreciate all of your time and effort that you guys put in speaking out with me. Really appreciate it.
Okay, everyone. Let's continue this. We have rezoning TCZ 8922 Lewisburg Road. We have 2 people signed up in support, nobody signed up in opposition.
Good evening, Alicia Thomas, Planning and Development. Okay. Alicia Thomas, Planning and Development. The rezoning case before you this evening is for a request to amend the existing zoning of 11.28 acres. The existing and the proposed zoning is residential mixed use 7, conditional use. The request is consistent with the future land use map, and Planning Commission recommends approval. As you can see here, the site is surrounded by a mix of future land uses, including moderate scale, medium scale residential uses, commercial, and public parks and open space. Here are some pictures of the existing site. The site is currently vacant and wooded. The site has frontage along Lewisburg Road and Kyle Drive. As you can see along Lewisburg Road, those photos, there is an existing utility easement on the site that inhibits buildability on the site. Here are a summary of the proposed conditions. Condition number 1 would prohibit various uses, including all commercial uses listed under 6.1.4 of the UDO, boarding houses, rest homes, dormitory, fraternity, and sorority uses. Number 2 would increase the maximum number of units from 260 to 400. Building height would be limited to a max of 6 stories and 90 feet. Condition number 4 would include the construction of a multi-use path built to City of Raleigh Greenway standards. Condition number 5 would require a 25-foot planted buffer along Lewisburg Road right-of-way. And lastly, condition number 6 would be the dedication of no less than 3.5% of the total number of units as affordable for no less than 10 years for low-income households earning no more than 80% of the area median income. And this table shows the existing versus proposed zoning. As you can see here, the only major change here is the number of units, which would be an increase of 140 units. The request is consistent with the following policies, including future land use and zoning consistency, compact development, housing variety, zoning for housing, incentives on private sites, and greenway-oriented development. And the only inconsistent policy is the frontage, UD 1.10. The recommendation from Planning Commission stated that the request would increase the housing supply by as many as 400 units. The request would provide as many as 14 affordable housing units, and the request would dedicate a greenway easement in the construction of a multi-use path. That's all for staff.
Okay. We have the applicant. I'm going to open the hearing. Again, there's no one here to speak in opposition. First off, anybody have any? Hold on one second. I just feel like I got bit by something. Oh. Do we have any questions before we open up the hearing? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Baldwin and members of council. I'm Matthew Carpenter with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street, here this evening on behalf of Hallie Building Group, and also with me is Eric Rifkin with Hallie. And this is a text change to zoning conditions. So All the other cases you've seen tonight have been rezoning requests in some form. And so our request is to change the current zoning conditions, not to rezone to a new zoning district. And the overall intent of the case is to add to add market rate and affordable units to a site that's already zoned for apartments. And the property is located at 5000 Lewisburg Road, and it's just north of the Capitol Boulevard 401 fork. And you can see some of the neighboring uses called out on this slide. We've got several existing apartment complexes in the area. And then one unique aspect of the property is that it's surrounded by city-owned property that's current and future park property. So to the south of us, we've got the Kyle Drive property, which is a large tract owned by the city that will be redeveloped into a park. And then on the north side of 401, you've got additional city-owned property that'll be greenway and open space that you can kind of see in the triangular forested area there. And the current zoning here is RX7 CU, and the site probably sounds familiar to some of you because that case, the rezoning case, was April of 2022. And so between early 2022 and now, there have been a lot of changes in the multifamily market. Interest rates have changed, building costs are fluctuating, and what that's led to is Hallie is really trying to maximize the efficiency of sites that are already zoned for apartment use. And so that's what we're doing here is we're keeping it RX7, but we're asking for some changes to the existing zoning conditions. And so this is a list of the current zoning conditions that apply to the property now. The first is kind of a general limit on certain uses that you see in a lot of these cases. The second is a maximum of 260 units. The third is a max building height of 6 stories and 90 feet. The fourth is a 25-foot planted buffer that was intended to speak to the parkway corridor designation on the property. And then the fifth is that the developer will construct a sidewalk stub to the greenway corridor. So the changes that we're requesting this evening really focus on condition 2 and condition 5 specifically. And so we've kind of distilled our request down to 3 specific changes. The first is to increase the max residential units from 260 to 400, and we'll do that without increasing the height or going into the setbacks any further, so within the same building envelope. We'll dedicate 3.5% of the total residential units as affordable units for 10 years at 80% AMI. And then the third change is that we'll construct the city greenway trail across the eastern portion of the property. So when we originally filed the rezoning case last year, there wasn't identified funding for Kyle Drive Park and then the greenway that would connect, the south side of Lewisburg Road with the north side. And in between the previous case and our tax change request, the city passed the parks bond. And so Parks and Rec staff reached out to us and said, we've got some money allocated now that to redeveloping Kyle Drive into a functional park. And so we'd like it if you consider actually constructing the greenway rather than just stubbing to it. So we are doing that. And then this slide is meant to give you an idea of how we got to the 80% AMI target for the affordable condition. And the thinking there is really to target kind of workforce housing. So what we found in looking at the income numbers was that when we went below 80% AMI, it excluded some occupations that we were really trying to focus on. So if you were to go to 60% AMI, for example, then it could potentially exclude police officers, firefighters, and some of the other jobs in the chart here. And then this slide is meant to convey kind of that same point. It's actually an excerpt from the affordable housing work session, and it's meant to show how the market is really made up of a lot of really expensive units and then definition of affordable housing on the other end that's government subsidized. So we're really focusing on kind of the middle where you can see that there aren't many graphs there. NOHA is naturally occurring affordable housing, and we know that's going away. So that 80% AMI is where we're focusing on, and we're doing it without displacing anyone. The site is undeveloped now, and there's no one living there. And then the requests are consistent with several of the comprehensive plan policies. The city's goal of expanding housing choices, and also the geographic dispersal of affordable housing units. I know we've seen a lot of units, affordable units in certain areas of the city and none in others. And so even in a small way, we think that this will help that. And then the policy H2.10 speaks to incentivizing private developers to create new affordable housing units on privately owned sites. And that condition actually talks about city funding, which we won't be using. So we're furthering that policy without using any public money. And so for those reasons, we believe the changes are in the public interest, and we respectfully request your approval. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the applicant? Okay, I will close the hearing. Do you have a motion?
Yeah. I'll make a couple comments first. Sorry, y'all have to be the last ones. I think it always makes us, I don't want to belabor the process. But there's a few things that I really think are really exceptional about this case, and I'm going to be excited to approve it in just a moment. One, I love that there, like you mentioned, there are no occupants on this land. It's also not greenfield development. This land is previously developed, and so appreciate that. Like you said, Kyle Drive got money from the bond, so I'm excited to bring a greenway connection there, champion for parks in District B. And then what I especially love is the creative way that you looked at sites that hadn't been activated yet and found a way to enhance the public good through the use of the conditions. So I really appreciate your efforts here, and I'm excited to approve. Give me just one second with the fancy language. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated May 2nd, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, that ends tonight's meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Now, good night.